Morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this morning's April 16th, 2025 budget workshop. I'm going to turn it over to the county manager, Manager Alters. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, board members, department heads, and staff. Welcome to the fiscal year 2026 budget workshop. Thank you, Chairman and board members, for the opportunity to serve Mohave County and its residents in this capacity. I would like to start by saying we are having a busy and a productive year, and while we have experienced some challenges, we have also had success. I'd like to name a few of those for you. Starting with the ARPA fundings, 100% of $41.2 million were programmed by December 31, 2024 as required. 90 projects in total, large and small, were funded. 50 of them have already been completed. 75% of the programmed funds, which equates to over $30 million, have been spent. Additionally, opioid settlement funding, over $4 million have been received, and of that, more than $2 million has been awarded in 2 rounds of grants. And we are gearing up, as you know, it's on the agenda for the next board meeting for the next round of $1.5 million. Additionally, we are having a robust capital improvement program. Starting with county facilities, we have over $25 million under construction. Next is water infrastructure. We have over $19 million in design and under construction, including flooding mitigation and aquifer recharge projects, as well as transportation projects in excess of $10 million. Lastly, we have worked with efficiency and have delivered mandated, essential, and discretionary services to county residents throughout all county functions and departments. With that said, I'm happy to report that we pursued and have achieved a structurally balanced budget for FY26. And as we look ahead, we see a more stable financial future. I believe this outcome can be attributed to the following: a year-round proactive approach to budgeting by staff, timely action by the board, and a disciplined group of department heads and team leaders who rose to the challenge, scrutinized their requests, closely managed their annual budget, and deferred budget needs that were less critical. Throughout this budget year, our priorities and efforts have been focused on achieving a structurally balanced budget with 3 key goals in mind. 1, sustain county functions. 2, provide efficient services. 3, minimize employee turnover and related impacts. Coincidentally, employee turnover has been and remains a major concern across all departments and throughout most sectors. The associated loss of knowledge and valuable experience is a significant challenge for us. During the FY26 budget kickoff meeting, the message to all county departments was clear. Hold the line on expenses. No new initiatives unless mandated by statutes or is budget neutral. And critical needs will be considered at the end of individual department meetings and only after an initial assessment of the general fund revenue and expense picture is clear and it provides a path to a balanced budget. So today, 4 options will be presented to you. Option 1 will be limited to bare bone needs with just a few initiatives. Option 2 will be the recommended option and will include most of the requested critical needs of the departments. Both options represent a structurally balanced budget. Additionally, we have options 3 and 4, which offer additional initiatives that are based on the board's commitment to support law and justice needs in Mohave County. However, neither one of these options produces a balanced budget. Finally, our dedicated employees are our most valuable and necessary asset, and we must offer compatible compensation and attractive benefits to recruit and retain them, and that is what this recommended structurally balanced budget offers. Once again, I thank you for hearing my thoughts. I will turn it over to Luke Mornian, Mohave County Chief Financial Officer, and his team to present the FY26 proposed budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Elters. Luke?
Thank you, Sam. Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, board members, county staff. Before I get started, I just want to thank you for the opportunity. I know that the last couple of years have been somewhat challenging from a budget standpoint, and so for those supervisors who are returning, thank you for your patience as we've worked through some of those challenges. For the new supervisors, this being the first time through the county budget process, I thank you for your attention and your questions. As I move through the slides, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to stop me. I will just give a heartfelt thank you to the budget staff within my office, to Sonia and Judy and Dawn for all the work that they have done, but also to all the departments. This is always a collaborative effort. There's a lot of work that goes into producing a budget, and so just thank you to everyone that's been involved. I will just say a couple of things before I get going. It's a lengthy slide presentation. I'm going to move through as quickly as I can. I will point out there's just less than a handful of new slides that were added since I sent the information to the board members yesterday. I'll point those out when we get to them. And I also will do my best to distinguish between, as we go through the initiatives, whether something is related to a general fund expense or whether it is a different fund, whether it's a fee or a grant-funded initiative, just so that you have a good, clear picture of which ones will impact our general fund. And with that being said, the last thing, if you do have questions and you're referring to the digital budget book that was sent out last week, the most effective way to deal with those questions will be if you're able to refer to a page number on that document, and we'll do our best to get that pulled up on screen so that everybody can be looking at the same information as we go through that. If I could get the slides up on the screen. So just very quickly, we will do a quick recap of the current year and where we stand versus our budget, an overview of next year's proposed budget, a detailed review of all the initiatives and capital requests. We'll talk about some components of the 26 budget that both increase revenues and decrease expenses, and then we'll look at the 4 different options that County Manager Elters went over in his introduction. The only other thing that I would add is that we do have a projected general fund balance at the end of this current year that is higher than what we need, so we do have a bit of a surplus for the fund balance, and so we'll talk about some options on what the board can decide to do with that, and look at projections over the next 5 years as well. So, supervisors, you've all seen this slide before. I'm just going to point out a couple of things. Our projections versus budget for the current year were about $12.5 million to the positive. About $3 million of that is on the revenue side, and close to $10 million on the expense side. The only thing I'm going to point out on here specifically is that personnel savings make up more than half of the total net positive, and that is largely due to the vacancies that the county manager mentioned. We're carrying anywhere from 80 to 100 vacancies consistently throughout the county. Our annual deed sale that is hosted as a joint effort by the clerk of the board and the treasurer for the second year in a row has grossed over $1.5 million in revenues for the general fund. And this year was the highest percentage of parcels sold. Statistically, it was 100%, but it was 99 point something percent of the parcels that were taken to auction sold this year. County manager mentioned this as well. Capital improvement, we have a number of projects that are ongoing, and I will just say that 2 sheriff substations completed this year. The Reach Out Reentry Center is scheduled to be completed by the end of the fiscal year, and then the other 2 projects that we have in the works, the Law and Justice Center Phase 2A, and that's the courthouse annex, as well as the Legal Services Center. Those are both scheduled to be completed by the end of fiscal 26. And so any funds that were budgeted for this year that are unspent at the end of this year are just going to carry over into 26, but there's no additional capital projects programmed for next year at this point in time. The expenditure limitation, this is basically just the cost of doing business for the county. This is a formula that's put together by the state. The only thing I want to point out on this slide, the highlighted counties there, those are the medium-sized counties, of which Mohave County is one of 4. We have the lowest spending percentage of all the medium-sized counties and the second lowest in the state. We spend right around 55% or so of our expenditure limit. And so basically what that means is the county is doing a good job of keeping expenses in line compared to the formula that calculates how much we should be spending on services. I'll quickly go over a couple of challenges and opportunities that we have looking ahead to next year. I will just say that the state budget and legislative issues, these are pretty much status quo. We always are monitoring those 2 components for the effects that they have on the county. The federal cuts that we're seeing, everything that's going on with the new administration in Washington, that is a bit of a switch from last year and the previous administration, so we're keeping a close eye on that as well. And the only other thing, as I mentioned, we do have an end-of-year fund balance that's projected to be above our target fund balance, and so one of the suggestions that I will make to you today is to put a formal policy in place on how to designate on an ongoing basis as we're planning for the future what to do when that situation arises. So very quickly, the state budget, just want to point out a couple of things. We have basically 2 conflicts going on right now. We have a conflict between the governor and the legislative majority, mostly centered around the Parents as Paid Caregivers program. It's a big sticking point right now. That program is running out of funds as we speak, and so there's need for supplemental funding in the current year. So that's one big issue. And then within the majority, we also have a bit of a conflict on the budgeting strategy for next year. And so in recent history, we've seen kind of the budgeting by allowance, a per member allowance, where if there's a surplus available, they doled that out, a set amount for each member. And that is the method that the Senate President wants right now. But the House Speaker and the House Appropriations Committee are more in favor of kind of unifying the group of legislatures behind a set agenda of priorities. And so we're keeping an eye on that just to see how that all works out. The last thing is that, as I mentioned, federal cuts. We've all heard about the $880 million or so that's being proposed over 10 years. Large percentage of that would come from Medicaid, and so that would obviously impact the state, and we will talk about how that will filter down to the county as well. Big meeting tomorrow with the Finance Advisory Committee. The FAC provides a quarterly update to the state's 4-sector revenue forecast, and so Unfortunately, I wish it would have been yesterday so that we could feed that in today's presentation, but we will absolutely take that information and make any adjustments prior to the tentative budget in June. From state shared revenue, the sales tax growth through the state year to date is about 3.4%. Another big item that we're keeping an eye on is ongoing funding for probation. The governor has proposed ongoing funding beginning in fiscal 27 and using one-time ARPA monies for next year's funding. And that is basically for, it's the backfill for probation officer salaries that the state has to cover. As far as the legislature goes, there's three things we always keep an eye on. Those would be unfunded mandates, cost shifts from the state to the counties, and any other bills that might impact the county's revenue options. And with all of these, anything that comes out of the legislature, depending on the timing of that, on how close it is to the tentative budget or the final budget, if the legislature is still in session and we've already adopted a final budget, we will need to utilize the contingency to cover any items that shifts costs down to the county. But again, we will keep an eye on those and make the changes as they come down to us. Same thing with this slide, federal cuts. If Medicaid is cut, that will impact the state's access program. It could impact what the county is required to contribute. And so we're keeping an eye on that. We've also seen decreases in grant funding. Public health estimates that impact so far at around $275,000. And there's some services on that slide there, immunizations and STI testing that could see increased demand if people start losing access to their access benefits. As Sam mentioned, vacancies continue to be an issue. Most pronounced, we see difficulty in recruiting any type of professional designations, but it seems to be the worst when it comes to attorneys. It's hard to get attorneys in rural Arizona, and the sheriff is doing all that he can to recruit deputies and detention officers, but continues to experience vacancies there. As far as the head count for the county, I just wanted to provide some metrics here so we can see over the last 5 years. The head count has essentially remained pretty flat. The general fund, we've seen an increase of 4 FTEs. There's been some up and down fluctuations over the 5 years, but as we look forward to next year with the initiatives that are included, there will be a net of 4 additional FTEs since 2022. On the other side, all the other funds combined, it's about 15 additional since 22, which is about just around a 3% increase. It's less than 1% on the general fund. When it comes to compensation, as County Manager Elters mentioned, we've made some pretty good strides over the last couple of years with performance-based pay and having annual merit increases tied to performance evaluations. We would encourage the board to continue to support that. It is included in our recommended budget. And the additional item there is to continue to fund the PTO buyback program in fiscal 26. This will be the 3rd year of the program. And we've seen incremental year-over-year growth in that program. So current year FY25, we saw about a 16% overall increase in participation across the entire county. And with that expansion to that program of increasing the number of hours employees could buy back from 40 to 60 if they met certain qualifications, we saw roughly 50% of the employees that participated took advantage of the full measure of the program. And next year for FY26, we are budgeting for about a 5% increase in participation. This is a new slide. You didn't have this in the deck that I sent out yesterday. wanted to very quickly just recap what happened at the EBT board meeting last month. Health costs continue to trend upward. That should be no surprise to anyone. But the actuary for the trust projected a shortfall. But on the other hand, we have a fund balance in the trust that is a little bit higher than what the actuary recommended. And so the EBT board chose to increase rates to cover about 25% of the shortfall, with the fund balance picking up the rest of that. And that continues the approach that we've taken the last several years, really trying to avoid having any very large increase in a single year. We're going to kind of wait it out and see the effect of that rate increase, hopefully draw down the fund balance a little bit closer to what the actuary recommends, and then adjust as needed on an ongoing basis each year. The only thing I want to point out is that with those rate increases for the EPO program, so an employee only, the impact is going to be about $6 per pay period, an increase in their deduction, or their premium, excuse me. And on the high deductible plan for employee only, it's about $10 a pay period. Okay, now we get into the meat of all the budget initiatives and capital requests. And so, as Sam said, there were a clear directive to the departments basically to hold the line on expenses. There's a number of reasons that an initiative would be included in the recommended budget. They're there on the screen, but I want to point out that many of the requests that we are including in our recommended budget have been reduced in scope from what the request originally came from the department. We've done our best to really push back and ask and kind of whittle down and really get to just what is absolutely needed versus, you know, something that may have had a little bit of padding or cushion in it. Even requests that didn't have padding or cushion in them that we could see, we also were mindful of what can the county actually afford and approve that is going to still leave us with a structural balance. I will say there was about $4 million in requests for the general fund. We've included about $1.3 million, so more than half of them were not included in the requested budget. That came down to a few very high dollar requests. The included initiatives are offset by a number of initiatives that were designed to increase the revenue to the general fund, and we'll get into those in more detail later. But the net impact to the general fund is actually positive, so we're including over $1 million in initiatives, but the net impact to the general fund is not an increase in expense, it's an increase in revenue. So this is general funded. The assessor is requesting some adjustments to their progression series, as well as some changes to departmental policy they have for when staff achieve professional designations. The county attorney, two different requests, one for a recruitment program to fund externships, and then to unfreeze an office specialist, primarily to assist with their disclosure requirements. Economic development, this is a grant-funded initiative paid out of a grant from Northern Arizona Good Job Networks, just moving a part-time employee to full-time. The Superior Court had some broad sweeping initiatives this year, largely based on a 2023 study by AOC. And this includes adjustments to compensation and reclassifications for most staff within the Superior Court. It is budget neutral. They offset the expense by freezing 2 court reporter positions. They also have a progression series, and then the board approved in early January a new division for the court, Division 8, and so that comes at about a $250,000 expense. That includes 1 elected judge and 1 judicial assistant. And so when we look at the courts, Superior Court, Clerk of the Court, the limited courts, and the justice courts, and probation, a lot of these initiatives are all related. So increase in compensation in one area, in order to maintain parity, you'll see increases in compensation in those other departments as well. For the court IT, this is court automation and automation assistance. Basically, again, decreasing a vacant full-time position to part-time and then providing pay adjustments for 3 IT staff. The clerk of the court, this is another broad sweeping initiative that basically is reclassifications for almost all of their filled positions, including court services assistants, clerks, supervisors, finance manager, deputy director, admin assistants. But across the breadth of all of those classifications, it's on average about a 2-range increase, so a 10% bump in pay. And again, that is based on that 2023 compensation study that AOC performed. Limited court admin and justice courts, we have about $135,000 worth of initiatives, a progression series, and then some reclassifications. New FTE position in Lake Havasu Justice Court. This should result in increased revenue for the court. They have a backlog of fees that need to be collected, and they have lacked the staff to really aggressively pursue those collections. And so this new position would primarily be assisting in that effort. Juvenile detention had some small requests for equipment. I'll just point out here that with those replacement radios, the initial request was for 20 all in 1 year. We decided it was a more sustainable plan to do 10 this year and then 10 next year, and kind of get them onto a rotation where they are replacing a number of those radios each year as they wear out, and so basically spreading the expense over several years rather than taking it all in 1 year and then having that come up again in several years. Probation is requesting some market adjustments for 2 of the top admin positions needed to address compression issues that they have. Also some market adjustments, and again, this is to maintain parity with the Superior Court with the comp adjustments that they've requested. On adult probation, so as the needs of the division have increased, it's becoming more and more difficult for them to meet staffing ratios that are mandated, and so they see the need to unfund one position that was frozen several years ago. That's going to result in a negative fund balance, and so we have put in a transfer from the general fund to support that, to avoid a negative fund balance. The department has also reached out to AOC. We're waiting to see if AOC is going to be willing to provide any additional funding to minimize the impact to the general fund. In the finance department, we are requesting a new accountant position. Similar to a lot of other departments, as the needs of the county have grown, as the amount of money flowing through the county has grown, the number of transactions that we deal with is also increasing, and so we need more staff to deal with that. We've also seen big increases on the regulatory side of things that are really increasing the workload in finance. I'm also requesting a reclassification for one of my financial services managers who basically oversees the county's audit and financial statements each year, and then another adjustment for one of the accounting managers in the office. This one is to deal with compression issues. The incumbent in that position has almost 40 years of experience, and so we need to make a distinction between the more junior accounting manager. In the sheriff's office, we have a market adjustment for the sheriff's assistant, and then some GIS services. And what this is a cost shift from the state. These are services that are required for the 911 system that the sheriff operates and maintains. the Department of Administration has decided it's no longer going to fund these particular services, and so the sheriff has asked for funding for that. This primarily deals with essentially making sure that when a 911 call is made and responded to, that the sheriff has accurate addressing information. That's what the GIS component is.
One question. Am I mistaken where I thought that the sheriff's office was requesting 4 deputies, that staff was recommending funding 2? I don't see that on this.
Chairman Lingenfelter, we will get into that a little bit later. The sheriff had requested 4 deputies as well as 10 detention officers. When we get to the 4 different options that we're going to present to you, the recommended option includes 2 detention officers, not deputies. The board recently at its last meeting approved funding for 1 deputy by doing away with the county's communications director, and so we'll speak to those when I get to the 4 options.
Very good. Thank you.
The sheriff also had a little over $1 million in capital requests. If anyone has questions about any of these items, I can answer them, but I'll just say that about $800,000 of the $1 million deal with officer safety. It's primarily upgrades that are needed to improve radio communication so that when officers are out there on patrol, they have good signal, good reception, clear communication in order to have appropriate response. On the jail side of things, we have about $200,000 split between personnel and capital requests. Here we have the 2 additional detention officers, Chairman Lingenfelter. We also have a reclass and a market adjustment, and then they've requested about a $30,000 upgrade to the Guard One system, and this is basically a system that's used to actively manage the inmate population within the detention center. I will point out that the request for the 10 detention officers, if we had included all 10 in the recommended budget, it would have increased the cost by about another $615,000, and it would have thrown us into a situation where we are not structurally balanced. HR has several initiatives. They're budget neutral. This is split between general fund and the employee benefits trust. It's about $6,700 cost to each fund, but it is offset by decreasing the range of one position that is not currently filled. Public fiduciary is requesting a new position, investigator, within her department. This will be the first increase in staff in over 10 years. They've seen increases in referrals and SIDS applications just across the board. The amount of workload in that department has been increasing consistently. I'll just point out a couple of different metrics. The referrals they get has gone from 53 in 2019 to 91 last year. The SIDS applications from 119 to about 150. And the active guardianship cases from 72 to about 109. Yes, Supervisor Martin.
Can you tell me what a SIDS application is?
That is, I should know this. Indigent decedent program. And so those are people that do not have I believe the funds to pay for when someone passes, and so the county has to pick up that cost. Is that correct, Rhonda? On the defense side of the house, we have a request in indigent defense for a new case assignment tech. And then the legal advocate has a reclassification that is budget neutral. Those are both general funded departments. Same for recorder and voter reg. These are general funded. And so 2 minor requests there. And similarly, in the treasurer's office, they're asking for a market adjustment for the treasury projects manager. This is another general funded department. This position has responsibility for investments as well as involvement with the annual tax deed sale, and recently is taking on the process of disposing of county-owned surplus properties. Elections, this is not general fund, this is the elections equipment replacement fund. Similar to last year, they're budgeting $500,000 for e-poll book replacements. Really a placeholder in their budget just in case they are needed. They budgeted for last year, didn't end up spending the money. But if it's needed, this will allow for more efficient voter check-in at the polls. Procurement, general funded. This relates to an ARPA project that the board had approved with the understanding that once the ARPA funds ran out, the general fund would begin to pick up any future costs. Originally, the ARPA funds were supposed to run out at the end of fiscal 25, but due to the timing of the hiring for the position, they will now run out mid-year in fiscal 26. And so this is asking to pick up the second half of the personnel expense for the year. And then IT, this is internal service fund. It's about a $13,000 expense for reclassification. About 2/3 of that will be allocated out to general funded departments, so about a $9,000 impact to general fund. Emergency management wants to replace some generators on their emergency communications vehicle. This is grant funded. Public health has several requests. These are fee and grant funded, a reclassification, and then as the county moves to updated food safety code, they want to provide some training to local food service workers and businesses. The main update to that code that drives this request is going from having a business owner or a restaurant needing to have someone on staff who's certified to having someone on staff who's certified and present on site. And so there's additional training that's involved with that. And so the request is basically to, during the first year of the transition to the updated code, to provide it at no cost, and then in future years it would be, there would be a fee charged.
Supervisor Burley.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Isn't that the responsibility of the business to pay a fee for this certification?
Supervisor Burley, yes. And so what the department is proposing, this is based on a program I believe was offered in Washington State. The drive behind this is to make sure that to drive compliance. You want restaurants to be fully compliant as we transition to the new code. And so during that first year of the transition, offering it at no cost to local businesses aids in driving up the compliance, and then in future years it would be fee-based.
Thank you.
On the capital side of things, and again this is grant funded, but requesting 2 replacement vehicles within the nutrition division. Both vehicles are old and repair costs are going up year over year. Division recently expanded some of their services to Colorado City, and so there's a need for reliable transportation. Animal shelter, this is general funded, so some minor personnel requests for a progression series and then reclassification of 2 positions. Library district, this is independent taxing district, so no general fund impact. The majority is projects within the different library facilities. Kingman includes some restroom flooring replacement. Bullhead is some painting and upgrades to their cafe kitchen. Havasu is some tile work and some painting, and then in the various community library sites, things like rain gutters and lighting and landscaping. Back into the general fund, development services is requesting a market adjustment for the chief building inspector. This is general fund, but it's offset with building permit revenues.
Supervisor Gould.
Supervisor Gould, I would have to lean on our Development Services Director to answer that question. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but I believe that it was net.
Director Poultry.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Gould, our building division actually operates in a positive with the fees that they generate as far as the fees that come in for building permits. The one I believe you're speaking to is our planning and zoning fees. Anything that we take in for planning and zoning as far as a rezone, special use permit, any work that they do, that's only covered about 30% of the work that is actually performed. Yeah.
We had the same conversation last.
Mr. Chair, Supervisor Gould, I believe there might be just some confusion on the fees that we were looking at when we were raising them. I think it was 6 years ago, was for those planning and zoning fees for the subdivision plats, your RVs, your RV permits, the special use permits, the rezones. Those ones were the ones that were looking to cover all of the costs. The costs that the fees that we receive for our building permits actually have brought money to the county every year for the past several years. The fees that we generate with the plan review and the building permits that we receive in the building division.
Thank you, Director Poultry.
Please continue.
Again, on flood control, so some personnel requests for reclassification of an engineering technician supervisor. This position actually performs as a certified drone pilot. This is a critical function that allows the department to capture some high resolution imagery to monitor groundwater, specifically with crop growth and things like that. Capital requests for flood control. We have a lot of projects going on. I will say that of the items listed on this slide, so close to 21 million, about 13 million of that is federal and state funds. So more than half of it. With the last item on there, the land, equipment, and design services, that basically includes purchasing land for things like flood basins and then setting funds aside for design for future projects as they come up. One other thing I want to point out, that Bank Street drainage project, $3.7 million, that includes $1 million that was congressionally designated spending through Senator Kelly's office. Just wanted to make a note of that. And then moving on to the landfill. Again, minor personnel reclassification, and then close to $4 million in capital. I'll just say that the gas containment systems and collection systems, those are required for meeting the post-closure requirements for the landfills. And so those are ongoing expenses that come up as we continue to fill and then expand the capacity of our 2 landfills in the county. And moving on to Public Works, we have a request for a market adjustment for the engineering facilities manager. Net cost to the general fund, $4,000. The next several slides are all related to HERF funds. And so we have in the roads division, market adjustments for 2 positions, as well as a request for some radios to be installed in the heavy equipment. We have close to $3.5 million in vehicle replacement and purchases. They're all listed there on the screen. I will just say that the motor graders, those are the cost for each one of those is inclusive of a $150,000 trade-in credit on each one, and this is a program that Public Works has been utilizing for several years with success. In the engineering department, again, we have a market adjustment for their budget manager, and then some matching funds for 2 ADOT managed projects, about $250,000. I've listed the total project cost there on the slide, so you can see that it's pretty good return on the local matched funds from HERF with projects that are over $4 million in total. Then capital requests for engineering include a couple of different things. So included in there is a replacement SUV, and then 2 projects, Chino Drive and Egar Road, both improvements to the roads. The traffic control division, and again, these are still HERF funded requests. A replacement truck, and then some equipment to be used for sign installation and marking. On the equipment maintenance side, we have, again, a market adjustment for the equipment fleet manager, and then about $145,000. This is upgrades to the fuel system at the Kingman Fleet Shop. This is going to allow them to purchase bulk diesel exhaust fluid, which is, I had to Google this because I'm an accountant, but this is basically used for proper functioning of some systems on the diesel vehicles to meet emissions requirements. But as you can see there on the slide, setting it up for bulk purchase is going to save several $1,000s to the county annually. On the fleet services, capital requests, again, this is basically the other side of the previous request, some upgrades to their fuel system as well. These are hardware and software upgrades, and basically represents a pretty big improvement in their system. It's going to enhance efficiency, and they have some of the current hardware is really worn out. The screens are fading. Hard to read, and so that they're in need of replacement. This one's a big one. Vehicle use. We have $2.3 million in replacement vehicles, 31 vehicles. I'll just point out here that of those 31, over half of them are vehicles for the Sheriff's Department. And then moving on to our county parks, Wallapai Mountain Park has just 2 relatively small requests, one related to Sawmill RV Park. This is to hire a consultant for an assessment that is needed, but once that is complete, that assessment basically allows the park to apply for state and federal grants, hopefully to fund the majority of that project, which is close to $5 million. And then there was a kiosk up in the park that was damaged last summer. This is basically a warranty replacement of that kiosk. Down in Bullhead at Davis Camp, similar NEPA study that will, once complete, will allow that division to apply for state lake improvement grant funds. And then the county also maintains several different water districts, and so between I-40 and Horizon 6, you can see there are a couple different requests. The site sheds are intended to basically protect the equipment from excessive heat exposure. The SCADA equipment, this is equipment that's used for the remote monitoring of the system. And GVID water system, requests for a replacement vehicle as well as replacement of close to 300 water meters that have reached the end of their useful service life. And then lastly, request from Community Services. This is grant-funded request. So some personnel initiatives totaling about $40,000, reclassifications, and then creating a career progression in their housing specialist job series. Just pause briefly. Does anyone have questions about any of those budget initiatives?
Questions from the board? Supervisor Borelli.
Mr. Chair, Director, go back to the previous slide, Community Service Workforce Development. So that's all grant funded. What if when the grant, and this is for progression, the grant goes bye-bye, what happens with these people?
Supervisor Borelli, just want to make sure I'm understanding your question. You're saying if the grant funding was to go away, what would happen to these positions?
Yes, because you said, because you said these are reclassifications and career progression. There's no funding. There's no
If the funding goes away, and I would rely on the community services director to confirm this. But if the grant funding goes away, there's a lot of that entire department is grant funded, a lot of different grants, and so as one grant expires, a lot of times they're able to shift resources to another grant to charge that grant to maintain the FTE. But if there's not that ability, then the position, I would imagine, would go away. Is that correct, Director Smith?
Any other questions from the board members? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Mornian, page 45, vehicle for the health department. Curious why this is an additional expense if they already have a vehicle. When a department gets a new vehicle, is that at the higher price of the new vehicle? I know we had a unique way that we price out leases.
Supervisor Gould, so good question. So these vehicles, replacement vehicles, these are actually department-owned vehicles rather than vehicles that are being charged a monthly fee by Public Works. And so they basically are responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance of these vehicles. And then, again, this is grant-funded, and so they're using grant funds now that those vehicles have basically been in service for long enough to the point that they need replacement. They will use grant funds to replace those vehicles.
So they're is it because they're grant funded that they're held separately from the rest of the vehicles?
I believe so. Is that correct, Director Palmer?
Okay. Yes. Page 50, Mohave infiltration basin. I believe that's grant funded.
Supervisor Gould, yes, you're correct. This is primarily, and most of the projects listed on that slide, but Mohave Infiltration Basin, this is primarily funded through the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority, both state funds and ARPA funds.
The reason I have some concern with that is those projects are incredibly expensive for the amount of water that they actually put in the aquifer. I'm more than happy to spend grant money to do that, but I don't think we should spend flood control money or general fund money to build those basins. Page 51. I thought we already bought a methane containment for the Mohave landfill. I know we electrified the Mohave landfill with ARPA money.
Supervisor Gould, that is correct. My understanding, and again, I would rely on Director Holtry to confirm this, but as those landfills, we have different cells within the landfills, and so as a particular cell within the landfill fills up, then we have additional requirements to put these systems in place. If we have a certain number of acres within the landfill, we're only utilizing a portion of it piece by piece. And so you'll see these requests year after year. There's additional costs that are involved.
So it's not a one and done, until the equipment needs replacing. So we're adding additional pieces of equipment.
That is my understanding, Supervisor Gould. Is that correct, Director Holtry?
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
I have a
Any other
question.
questions? Supervisor Letman.
Let's continue with the landfill on page 50, the 3.6 million in CapEx. What's the source of those funds?
Supervisor Letman, so you say slide 50 or 51?
It is,
51.
51, I'm sorry.
Sorry. So again, same projects that Supervisor Gould was asking about. So these are funded, I believe, through the fees generated by the landfill. Is that correct, Director Holtree?
Okay, so it's not coming out of general fund per se.
No, this is not general fund.
Back on page 39, could you recap on elections again, the $500,000 placeholder for e-poll book? I didn't quite understand that. Did we have that this year?
Supervisor Letman, so in the FY25 budget, there was the same amount that was budgeted, and per the elections department, only if this was determined to be both beneficial and necessary would they replace the e-poll books that they currently have. So basically, and again, my understanding here is that if those current e-poll books that they have are no longer able to be upgraded, or if there's an option that is going to significantly improve the efficiency of the voter check-in at the polls, then they would basically pull the trigger to spend the funds out of the elections equipment replacement fund to purchase new e-poll books.
Not to get into too much details, wouldn't we know that now?
Supervisor Letman, I would need to lean on the elections director for that answer. Is Alan here?
And he's here. See?
Director Teppert.
You see me? Okay, good. I've never done it from here. I decided to. Okay, yeah, let me tell you. Our electronic poll books were purchased 9 years ago. The system was purchased 9 years ago. And since that time, we had used Help America Vote funds, HAVA funds, to repurchase 2 years ago new, they're actually just, they're laptop computers is really what they are. Now, they're good quality IBM laptop computers, but really what it comes down to it is technology's changing an awful lot, and the needs that we have to do on the state on checking people in and with the registered voters and this and that and here and there. There's other technologies, there's other companies that offer a better product, as what I've got to say. I can still suffice with what I have and do, and we do very well with the logic, but there's more up-to-date products out there that may allow us to work a little bit more. So we have a thing called the Equipment Replacement Fund, which might have, I don't really know what the balance is, Luke could tell you that, but it's well over the, the $500,000 I put in there. And actually, I threw $500,000 because it would be buying the software, it would be buying all the sorts, like anything else you would buy like that, and it really wouldn't cost $500,000. It would be closer to the $400,000 quarter range, or maybe more. But the money's there, and I just wanted as a placeholder to say, in case I needed to pull the trigger before the next general election cycle, it's there. It's ready to go, and I'm not coming to you later and saying, okay. So that's really what it's for. I'm really working to make this work out fine. And it is working fine, but it's just in case.
Thank you for that. Does that answer your question, Supervisor Letman?
It sure did.
Supervisor Martin, any questions so far? Luke, I just have a couple questions. I think it's page 57 or 58, Public Works Fleet Services. I'm wondering how we're doing when it comes to the fleet maintenance and repair shop space and the number of mechanics. I know that as we continue to grow, there's a whole lot of departments that rely on those mechanics in that space. The sheriff, everybody that's on the road in this huge county that we have. Was that discussed this year?
Chairman Lingfelter, I would need to ask Director Latosky to answer that question for you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Director Latosky, can you briefly come up and speak to that point?
Good morning, Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board. We did not specifically discuss the staffing level at the for the automotive mechanics this year with the Fleet Services Fund 603 budget. That primarily on the premise that we did add an additional position for an automotive technician in a previous year recently, so to accomplish some more in-house rigging of our law enforcement and other specialty vehicles. So that is something that we are doing in-house. It is taking up some additional time, but I think it's a very well-managed effort and something that brings that rigging process completely under our control rather than contracting that out.
Yeah. Do we have enough mechanics, in your opinion, to do that in a reasonable time? And is the space big enough? And is that something we're going to be looking at in the future?
Good question. In my opinion, we are at a level where we are fully utilizing our fleet shop space. I don't think we are under capacity at this point. And as it aligns with the automotive mechanics, I think the same can be said that we're fully utilizing our staff, obviously to the best of their capabilities. They do a fantastic job. I don't see a inherent shortfall at this time, but it's something that we will be keeping an eye on.
Okay, great. Appreciate that. I mean, there's a lot of people that they do great work. Small space. I'm sure that sometime in the future we're going to have to expand that space, but there's a lot of people in the county that rely on them.
And I should also add, for the convenience of the departments that we serve, we do have another shop in the Mohave Valley area off of Vanderslice Road, and we have a very small shop in the Lake Havasu area.
Very good. Thank you. Director Mornian, my next question would be, gosh, I don't remember what page it was. It was the parks, Walpi Mountain Park, specifically the $4.8 million cost for the Sawmill RV Park. You said that was going to be $4.8 million and estimated to take in between $150,000 to $200,000 of revenue annually. So that'll take us 24 to 32 years to pay off. Is that correct?
Chairman Lingenfelter, yes, that math would pencil out, I believe. But the point of this slide, my understanding is that the $35,000 that's required to hire a consultant to complete that NEPA assessment is that assessment has to be completed in order for the Parks Department to apply for grants that can be used to offset a good portion of that $4.8 million cost for the RV park.
I guess a follow-up question to that would be, with all the parks that we do have, and we don't have a park up north of the Colorado River in northern Mohave County, is that $5 million the best expense to maximize revenue where we can? I mean, I know Davis Camp is probably the top breadwinner when it comes to revenue, right? But I want to make sure that every dollar that we spend is going to where it's going to generate the most return for us. 24 years to 32 years to pay off an RV park sounds like a lot of time.
Chairman Lingenfelter, I would need to lean on the Parks Director or the Public Works Director, but I'm not sure that once they complete the NEPA assessment, I'm not sure if there's likely restrictions on what any grant funding that the county does obtain for that. I don't know if it's specific to RV parks within a park system or if it can be used for other purposes. Kind to answer your question, if there's a need in the northern part of the county, but also to the other point that you made, Davis Camp is the primary revenue generating park within the county park system.
Well, and also ongoing maintenance for all of the park, the places where we have a parks presence. We don't have to dwell on that anymore. The only other question I have was the one department you didn't mention was the Economic Development Department. I know that we got this zero-based budgeting document. Are you going to provide a summary for that as well, like you did it for everybody else?
Chairman Lingenfelter, yes, I am. It was an oversight that the slides weren't included yesterday, and so I do have a couple of slides at the end of the presentation where we will discuss that. I will say, since you brought it up, that of the three options that are presented in that zero-based budget, it is the option one, the basic option, is what is incorporated into the recommended budget that we're presenting to the board. but I will go over all three options that they presented.
Very good. Any other questions from the
I do.
board members?
I have
Supervisor
one,
Lettman.
I have one oversight on my part. I noticed there was no capital set aside for replacement for the Beaver Dam Sheriff's Substation.
Supervisor Lettman, that is something, it is not currently programmed. The sheriff received $9 million in state appropriated funds a number of years ago. As I mentioned earlier, he has completed the new substation in Lake Havasu as well as in Mohave Valley to the tune of about $4.2 million. So there's about $800,000 left. The sheriff is looking at options, I believe, within the Beaver Dam area, but nothing has been decided on at this point. And so that's where we're at, kind of current state with what to do with those remaining funds.
Okay, thank you.
Last call. Any other questions? Please continue.
Thank you, Chairman. If I can get the slides back up. Okay, going on to our revenues and expenses for FY26. I'm going to really quickly just recap. This chart shows primary property tax levy only across the state. So the various counties and what they are levying for a county primary property tax rate. This is 2025 data, and Mohave County was 7th lowest with our levy rate of 1.7547. The maximum levy rate for next year is 2.2548. So basically a penny in levy next year equates to $272,000. And as the board is aware, property taxes are a huge piece of the revenue that funds the general fund. It's about 40%. This next slide, and I will just point out that this is FY24 data. We didn't have, through CSA, we didn't have access to the blended rates for the current fiscal year. This includes all of the different countywide property taxes. And so that includes things like the flood district, TV, library, fire district assistance. But this shows we were 9th lowest in fiscal 24. And then again, excise tax. I'm sure everyone is aware Mohave County is the only county that does not have a general fund sales tax. This chart just shows where the other counties around the state land with their total excise taxes. And this chart also includes things, not just general county excise tax, but different excise taxes like for jail districts or health services districts. There's a number of different vehicles for sales tax around the state. Okay, this is really getting into the meat and potatoes of how we arrived at a balanced budget that we can recommend to the board for FY26. And so before I get into the data that's on the slide, I'm going to just make a point that the measures that are noted here on the revenue slide, and these are basically measures intended to boost revenue in the general fund. And then in a couple slides following this, you'll see measures that we've put in to decrease expense in the general fund. All of these, all of the 4 different budget options we will discuss later on are predicated on having all of these revenue recommendations and all of the expense recommendations included. And so pulling out one or more of them will likely result in us going from a balanced budget to a structural deficit. So I just wanted to make that clear. I'll walk through these one at a time. First, we are recommending a sweep from the library district of $1.25 million. This is authority provided by JLBC. It's been included in the governor's recommended budget for the recommendation that she released in January for FY26. Haven't heard any other discussion either way on that since, but it's been approved year after year for a number of years. So we will utilize that flexibility. The other big item that we are proposing is a tax rate swap where we decrease the property tax levy rate in the TV district and the library district. 2 cents from the TV district, 4 cents from the library district. And again, remember, each penny of levy rate is $272,000. And so between 6 cents of decrease, we would then increase the general fund property levy rate by the same amount, 6 cents, which equates to just about $1.6 million in increased funds for the general fund. And I have another slide that kind of details that. We have also looked at our average collection rates for property tax revenues over the last 4 or 5 years, and seen that our actual collection rate is about 98% of what is levied. Historically, the county has budgeted for a 95% collection rate, but the data proves out that we can comfortably increase that, and so we're budgeting for a 97% collection rate. Still gives us a little bit of wiggle room should we see a downturn next year, but I don't expect that we're going to see that. On the state shared revenue side, we are budgeting for slow but steady growth. We do get data from the state on this, on where their projections lie. As I mentioned earlier, the FAC is meeting tomorrow, and so that'll be a big piece of what comes out of that meeting. But we have looked at what the governor's office is projecting and what JLBC is projecting, and then we have looked at what our actual growth in state shared sales tax has been, because as you know, the statewide rate could vary quite a bit from Mohave County. That statewide growth rate is heavily influenced by the Phoenix metro area, and so we wanted to incorporate into our projections the actuals that we're seeing here. And so, but we have budgeted for slow but steady growth there. The auto lieu tax, this is revenue derived from the vehicle license fee you pay when you register your vehicle. We've seen a steep increase this year versus what we budgeted for. And that's due to a number of things: rising vehicle costs, as well as it looks like there's been an awful lot of people buying vehicles. We did not want to budget next year for the same rate of growth we saw this year, and so we're budgeting a little bit conservatively there. It's basically a 2% increase compared to our current year projections, and we'll continue to monitor that to see if this year was an anomaly or whether we see that high growth rate trend continue next year. And then the only other thing to say as far as revenue, I talked a little bit about this earlier. Federal revenue, especially grants, we've seen some cuts there. We'll see what else happens with the new administration, so we're actively monitoring that situation. But should cuts be made to grants that are used to provide mandated services, we will then need to pay for those services in some other way. Basically, if that cost is shifted down to the county, the general fund will be left to pick up the bill. And so it's just something we're keeping an eye on. And as we get firmed up numbers or definite numbers, we'll incorporate those into the tentative budget that we bring to you in June.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Mourning, do you have a dollar amount of mandated services that are grant funded?
Supervisor Gould, I don't believe we have that breakout. I do have the breakout of the mandated versus essential versus discretionary later on in the presentation, but I don't believe we have it broken out by grant fund versus...
Might be a handy number if that's something that we're going to be concerned with. Thank you, sir. Continue.
Again, this slide just shows kind of the difference between what the governor's executive budget recommended versus what JLBC was recommending. The county projection, that bottom line there, for current year, we're seeing about 3.1% growth in state shared sales tax. Right in line with JLBC, lower than what the governor's executive recommended. And then for next year, you can see that we're budgeting at 3.2%. As I said, that's based on the Mohave County experience versus what's coming from the state. And so we're a little bit more conservative than what the state is showing. And then I'm going to skip over this except to say that when it comes to delinquent tax collections, we're kind of holding steady there because we've seen solid results year over year from both the tax lien sale in the treasurer's office and that tax deed sale that I discussed at the beginning of the presentation. And then here's the details of the rate swap for property taxes. And so the key points here, as I mentioned, this is a key component of our FY26 balancing act in order to get to a structural balance. It's about $1.6 million in total, but it basically shifts those revenues from the TV district and the library district that do not benefit the general fund. It shifts them to the general fund. Both of those districts have healthy fund balances that can absorb this. We've done the 5-year projection for both of those districts, and both of them will be just fine over that 5-year period. And actually, towards the end of the 5-year period, both of them start to actually see a slight year-over-year growth in their fund balance. The other key thing to mention here, property owners' tax bills will remain the same overall. This next graphic just shows if you own a $300,000 home, what's the effect? You can see, yes.
I want to pause you for a moment. Sorry, Supervisor Gould, did you have a question?
The property owner's tax bills will not remain the same. They're going to, if you adopt the proposed budget, their bills will be higher.
Supervisor Gould, I believe you're referring to the fact that the property values are increasing year over year?
Your statement was their tax bills will remain the same. That is not true. Their tax bill will be higher.
Supervisor Gould, let me correct myself then. If the property values were held constant in the example I'm giving, the property tax bill would remain the same.
Okay, I'll buy that one. As complicated as it is.
Thank you. Please continue. Thank you.
And so on this graphic, you can see in the middle, the current tax bill, you can see what's being paid to the TV district, library district, and to Mohave County. And then in the far right column, the proposed tax bill, you basically see that shift decreases in the top two and an increase on the Mohave County one, but the bottom line total is the same for the property owner. And then this, as proposed, this would be the tax rates for the 4 countywide property tax levies. So 1.8147, 6 cents higher than what we're currently at 1.7547 for the general fund. And then the library district being 4 cents lower than the current rate of 2.548. Flood control stays the same at 50 cents, and the TV district drops 2 cents. Onto the expense side. And so again, as I mentioned, these are measures that we've taken to reduce expense to the general fund. They, again, just like the revenue items, are key components of that balancing act. And so if we end up with a budget that doesn't include any one of these, then that will likely throw us out of balance and into a structural deficit. When it comes to risk, this is basically the department that pays the county's liability insurance. It is a separate fund from the general fund, but it maintains its own fund balance and charges those costs out to all of the county departments, including the general funded departments. They have a healthy fund balance that's built up over the years, and so we're taking a 1-year holiday from charging the costs out, and instead that fund will pick up the costs in FY26. There's a number of ongoing transfers out of the general fund to pay for certain expenses. The jail major maintenance and then the building maintenance funds, again, both have healthy fund balances, and so we've decreased the amount of transfer in FY26 only. But these are basically one-time measures. These funds can absorb the impact in FY26, and then the transfers would resume at the regular rate in future years in FY27 and beyond. But between the two, it's about $650,000. And then we received word earlier this year that the county's contribution for the long-term care component of the state's healthcare system is being decreased significantly. This one is kind of the elephant in the room. We've seen over the last several years, there's mechanisms in statute that if Access says, Mohave County, you need to contribute $2 million, and they bill out to all the different counties around the state. At the end of the year, they find out that they've collected, X amount of dollars and they've only spent Y, and there's a surplus. they have to refund 50% of it to the counties. It's a good deal for the state because they keep the other 50%. But what we've seen the last couple of years is hefty refunds. So they're really overbilling and then refunding the county a pretty good sum of money. Last year, it was over $2 million. And so they've, I think, recalibrated a little bit, and it's resulted in a pretty big decrease for us. We'll continue to monitor this. Obviously, the cuts to Medicaid could have an impact on this as well. So it's, as I said, kind of the elephant in the room. It's on this slide especially, this is the one thing that we're really keeping an eye on.
Supervisor Gould.
To that point, I believe it was in 2013, the legislature and Governor Brewer expanded access above the poverty level. So we'll see whether if the federals cut that funding, are they going to contract and go back to the poverty level? Or are they going to continue to pay benefits for people that live above the poverty level?
And Supervisor Gould, great point. I know there's a number of discussions taking place. They're looking at, that program was also, I believe, expanded to some degree during COVID. And so there's a number of discussions taking place right now on, how to shrink that back, as well as, I believe the discussion was having some other requirements put in place in the system that would help to shrink the population that is utilizing access.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
But again, nothing definite at this point. It's just, ongoing discussions. And then the board had requested that we provide a breakdown of general fund services by type, so mandated versus essential versus discretionary. And I know this is important information for the board. I just want to emphasize a couple of things before I get into the data. Our budgeting software is not capable of producing this metric or monitoring this metric. The ClearGov software that we use and even the Munis ERP system that we were using for budgeting before we implemented ClearGov, neither one of them, while they are designed for government entities, they do not include this sort of mechanism. And so what we're left with is a very manual process, at the department level as well as within the finance department. As you know, manual processes are inherently prone to error when you key in a lot of numbers. So I just want to point that out. As we move forward this year and in subsequent years, I'm always going to do my best to highlight any time that we see any sort of impacts that increase or decrease the level of mandated services the county is required to provide. We will continue to provide this metric to you if that is what the board wants. But along with that, we're going to always highlight any sort of items, legislative impact, whatever it is that kind of adjust the dial on those levels of services the county has to provide. And so as you can see here, about 85% of the general fund expenses are tied to mandated services. Last year, well, I'll go back to FY24. The percentages were 83% mandated, 6% essential, 12% discretionary. FY25, 85% mandated, 6% essential, 9% discretionary. You can see that they're holding pretty steady the last 3 years. So just wanted to point that out. I will say that on the mandated side of things, there's a lot of offsetting fluctuations. You have things going up, you have things going down. From the sheriff's office in the jail, we saw an increase of 1.7 million in mandated, and that's largely tied to the compensation package that was approved fiscal 24 for the sheriff.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Mournian, how would the sheriff's funding increase be a mandated service? That seems like that's a decision made by the Board of Supervisors, not by another level of government requiring that we do that, other than the state requires we have a sheriff's office.
Supervisor Gould, so because the state requires we have a sheriff's office, the funding, and to your point, it is directed by the board, approved by the board, but if the board approves it, that is a function that is considered a mandated service. And so it's the board's discretion at what level they fund it at, but once it is funded, it's included in our metric for mandated services.
So can you give me a definition of those three classifications then?
So mandated would be anything that is required by state statute or some other law or statute. We could have federal mandates. Basically, the county doesn't have a choice in it. We have to provide the service. When it comes to things that are essential, these are, I would define that as a highly valued service, maybe that the board has made a priority of. I don't have the definitions that we provided to the departments in front of me. And then
That's a discretionary service also. You're putting a value on the service, but it's still discretionary to the board.
Supervisor Gould, yes, that is one way that you could look at it, because if it's not mandated, I shouldn't use that word. If it's not mandated, it is discretionary. There is some level of discretion.
The level of funding then in some of those mandated services is still discretionary also. That we have to have a sheriff's office, we have to have a recorder's office, we have to have a medical examiner's office, but the level of funding is still discretionary.
Supervisor Gould, yes. I'll give you one example of what an essential service, building inspections. There's no mandate that we need to, excuse me. This is just one of the fluctuations that we had this year. Based on the department's performance measures, we moved a portion of building inspection out of mandated services into discretionary. And then the fluctuation we have in the bottom line there in discretionary was basically the fluctuations in the county's contingency, because that is purely discretionary. It's absolutely recommended we have a contingency fund, but it is discretionary.
Director Morty, and just follow-up question, is a majority of the discretionary funding shown there, is that the contingency fund?
Chairman Lingenfelter, that is correct. So for FY26, we are recommending about a $12.5 million contingency fund, 10% of the county's general fund operating expenses. And the $1.7 million increase that you see there is almost all increase from 11 million in FY25 to 12.5 million next year.
Supervisor Gould.
Mr. Chairman. Director Morty, and then where do you put the $25 million in additional reserve on that chart?
Supervisor Gould, that money, that fund balance, that's surplus in the general fund is not in these figures.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Please continue.
Okay, so on to recommendations. For general fund balance, I'm recommending we maintain $50 million. That is comprised of two components, 3.5 months of operating expenses, and that is basically to take us from July 1st through the middle of October when property tax revenues start to show up, and then a 10% contingency. It's been rounded up to 13 million on this slide. I won't read the slides to you. I'll just say that all of the recommendations here to maintain a healthy contingency and a healthy general fund balance basically are to provide the county with the flexibility and the ability to react or respond to events that happen throughout the year. So as we get into the four different options, we have a couple of assumptions. Assumption one would be that our actual spending remains below our budgeted spending. That is due in large part to the fact that we continue to carry around 100 vacancies countywide, much of it in the general fund. We're assuming continued stable property values. We are assuming slow but steady growth in state shared revenues, and also there's a number of significant uncertainties. We've talked about many of these, and just due to the timing of actions by the legislature or actions at the federal level, as I said before, if decisions are finalized and made before we present a tentative budget, we will incorporate those values and their impacts into the tentative budget. If they're still ongoing and we've already approved a tentative budget, at that point, any increase to the general fund expense would have to be taken out of contingency. There's a couple of these that I do want to talk about. City of Kingman is considering utility increases to their water billing, and so that's going to go before the City Council for approving those increases at their meeting on May 20th. And if they're approved, those increases would go into effect July 1st. And then the sheriff commissary that I have listed here, there's been a mandate from the FCC that inmate telephone services cannot be revenue generating for the county anymore. It's a $200,000 to $300,000 hit. The commissary has a fund balance that can absorb that for FY26, and so we're not recommending that the general fund pick up any of that in FY26. We're recommending that the commissary fund balance pick it up, and then we see where we're at the end of 26 and budget for it as a general fund expense if needed in 27 and beyond.
Director Mornian, follow-up question on that. Can the county request that the inmate telephone services break even?
Chairman Lingenfelter, did you say that request that they break even?
Yeah.
I believe that is the case, and I believe that that's where the contract will be adjusted to.
Thank you.
If our sheriff is here, he could probably
That's
answer
all right.
that.
Let's not.
Okay.
Let's go.
So looking ahead, just some general recommendations. We've talked an awful lot about this in past years, but recurring revenues for recurring expenses, non-recurring revenues only for non-recurring expenses. I won't dwell on that anymore. The bottom item on this slide, though, I am going to look for some feedback from the board today as far as what the board would like to do with a fund balance policy, especially with designating some of that surplus for future needs. And so I'll give you a couple of options, take feedback, and then work that into a detailed policy that we'll present with the tentative budget.
Director Mornian, when the county manager and yourself and myself met for our individual meeting, we had a discussion regarding a possible use for that. Is that contained in this as well?
I'll present several different options, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
And so again, with all four of the options that we're presenting, they all include that tax rate swap that results in a primary property levy rate of 1.8147. That results in about $5.1 million in additional tax revenue, not just the levy rate swap, but it's comprised of three different things. $2.6 million is due to property values increasing year over year. $1.6 million is related to the tax rate swap, and about another $1 million is that shift from budgeting for a 95% collection rate to a 97% collection rate. So between the three of those, you get $5.1 million in additional property tax revenue. Of the four options, as County Manager Elters said in his remarks earlier, we're recommending the second, option B. This is sustainable over our 5-year projection, and that is going to be our recommendation to the board. So option A, as Sam mentioned, this is the bare bones version. You can see that solid green bar towards the top of the slide results in a recurring surplus of about $650,000 for FY26. What does this option include? So the only initiatives that it includes are the Division 8 for the Superior Courts that the board approved at its first meeting in January, and then 2 budget neutral initiatives, which is basically the adjustment to the internal policy for the assessor's office when it comes to their professional designations. That had no impact. And then the Superior Court has requested a progression series with their courtroom technologists, and that was budget neutral as well. And then the last item that is in here is market adjustments for the Sheriff's Administration Assistant. Doesn't include anything else, no budget initiatives or capital requests that were, no budget initiatives that were requested by the departments. Option B, this is our recommended option. Bottom line net change to the general fund is positive $70,000. As I said, this is, it maintains a net positive change throughout the 5-year projection. The resulting fund surplus at the end of fiscal 26 is over $25.5 million. And so that is, that is the surplus that is essentially available to fund one-time expenses. So included in option B would be funding for most of the requested budget initiatives. We had 32 different budget initiatives that were requested, and this provides funding in whole or in part for 26 of those 32. A number of progression series, a wide range of compensation adjustments and reclassifications for specific positions or whole classes of positions. It includes the funding for those upgrades to the 911 system that we talked about, and it includes 8 new full-time equivalent positions. 7 of those 8 are related to law and justice, so county attorney, courts, the sheriff, the jail. And before I get into option C and option D, I'll just say that both option C and option D, they're not recommended by myself or the county manager. They're included here because the board has expressed a desire to see what those options would look like in support of law and justice. But both options utilize a portion of the fund balance, so one-time funds, to pay for recurring expenses. And so while we may have the money this year and we may have the money next year, we don't have a recurring revenue stream to support those recurring expenses. And that is something that I strongly advise against. So option C, you can see that it takes us from a net surplus to a net deficit. Net change to the general fund is about $820,000 negative. It decreases the flexibility that we have in future years to adjust to any additional needs that come up. The add-ons for option C is basically 6 additional positions. So it's 3 additional detention officers in the jail. It's 2 additional deputies. And Chairman Lingenfelter, I believe this is what you were referring to. And then also one of 2 court commissioners that were requested by the Superior Court. I will say one of the reasons that this is not our recommendation, aside from the fact that it puts us in a position where we're not structurally balanced, on the jail and the sheriff side of things, the jail currently has 6 vacant funded positions. And when I look over the last, going back to January of 2024, they have averaged right around 6 vacant funded detention or detention officer positions. When we look on the patrol side of things with the sheriff's deputies, they currently have 7 vacant funded positions, and they've been maintaining on average since January of 2024 close to 10 vacant deputy positions. If we move that window up to just this fiscal year, so since July 1st, they've been maintaining an average of 8 vacant deputy positions. And so it's hard to recommend creating more funded vacant positions. It's no fault of the sheriff. He's doing everything that he can to attract qualified candidates. The there's just challenges there. The court commissioner,
I'm going to pause for just a moment. I think we have a question from Supervisor Lettman, then Supervisor Borelli. Supervisor Lettman.
Wouldn't part of the sheriff's vacant opening situation be solved by increasing the pay for the deputy sheriffs?
Supervisor Lettman, great question. Maybe. There's a study that is in progress, that CSA has partnered with both of the universities. The results of that study are expected. I believe it's in September. They're going to publish the results of that. And so I can't say for sure. Maybe. We did increase deputy pay a number of years ago. It did have some impact. I can't say for sure whether that would completely deal with it. I think that there's, in speaking with the sheriff, he has been clear that while pay may be a component, 10, 15 years ago, the sheriff's department, when they would post a position for a deputy, they would get a stack of applications. And if they got 20 applications, maybe, half of them would pass muster. But today that's simply not the case. They get maybe one or two or even a handful of applications, and then most of them can't pass the physical, can't pass the psych, can't pass the drug test. So I can't say for sure, but it's one piece.
Okay, so it sounds like we need to shake up the status quo on hiring sheriff's deputies, and it sounds like a pay increase, a significant one, might be a component of that. I'm certainly willing to go down that path.
We're going to have an opportunity to speak for all of our elected officials. Hold that question when we get to the sheriff. Let's ask him that point directly. I'd like to delve into that a little bit further as well. Supervisor Borelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and excuse me, Director. You had said these 7 positions are vacant, but they're funded. Okay, at the end of the fiscal year, what happens to those funds?
Supervisor Borelli, so because it is general funded department, at the end of the year, any of those vacancy savings just roll back into the general fund. So they would increase that fund surplus at the end of the year.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Director, couldn't those funds be used to be able to get the sheriff's office in pay for deputies to get some type of parity with their peers from the surrounding community?
Supervisor Borelli, great question. So if we have vacancy savings at the end of, let's say, the current fiscal year, so those are one-time monies because they're savings generated from a specific fiscal year. If we use them to implement pay raises, we are now adding to the recurring expenses that we're going to see year after year after year after year. And so you're basically using one-time revenues to fund recurring expenses. If the county does not continue to see budgetary savings, whether they're vacancy or otherwise, in the general fund in future years, then you could quickly get into a position where now you're back into a structural deficit.
I'll save it for when we get into the rest of the agenda.
Very good
Discussion.
Supervisor Martin.
Chairman, Luke, just so I'm clear on this, you're saying right now the sheriff has six positions that are funded that are not filled? 7?
Supervisor Martin, as of April 4th, the sheriff had 7 vacant funded deputy positions. So if he were to have 7 qualified applicants, he could fill those 7 positions with the current year's budget. The funds are there. They're just waiting for the right person to apply for the job.
And if I understand right, he has said that the cost of it to put a deputy on the street is $110,000 to $130,000.
I believe the figure we've been using is $114,000, Supervisor Martin.
So there's 7 times $114,000 in the budget right now that's authorized if he had the people to put them in there.
That is correct, Supervisor Martin.
And what are we proposing this year? Are we proposing giving him any more positions?
Supervisor Martin, for fiscal 26, and I'll back up the slide here if we want to put the slides back up, but option B, that is our recommendation to the board, does not include, let me step back just a bit. The sheriff requested 4 additional deputies in the budget that he submitted. We have not included any of those in the budget due to the fact that he already has funded vacancies that he's been unable to fill. At the last Board of Supervisors meeting, Chairman Lingenfelter brought an item to take the funding for the communications director, do away with that position, which the rest of the board agreed with, and provide funding for 1 deputy position. So that 1 deputy position, additional deputy position, is included in our recommendation because that was the direction we received from the board. But the 4 that the sheriff requested in his budget have not been included.
If I understood, when we talked about that, there was a mention of 2 positions being funded and that Chairman Lincolnfelters would give him 3. So now we're down to 1?
Supervisor Martin, when we met and discussed, the 2 positions were detention officer positions. We included 2 of the 4 deputies in the option C, which is still the case in what we're presenting to you today. So those numbers have not changed since we met 2 weeks ago.
As it stands right now, he's only looking at getting 1 based upon Supervisor Lincolnfelter's motion that was approved, that we take that money and apply it to 1 deputy.
Supervisor Martin, that is correct. And so if he continues to carry the 7 that are vacant right now through the end of the year into fiscal 26, then he would have 8 vacant budgeted deputy positions at the beginning of fiscal 26.
Okay.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Director, let's go back to the 7 vacancies. If those 7 vacancies were filled, then we would be required to continue to fund those after they're hired. So how is it that you cannot just say, okay, he didn't hire them, they've been funded in the budget, they're vacant, we freeze that hiring or just reduce that and just be able to take the rest of that money so he can get some parity? Because if I remember right, in the last presentation by the sheriff, he had said it would cost roughly $900,000 to kind of like get some kind of parity on that. It'd be great if the sheriff was here, because I'd like to ask him a question, if that number still holds.
We're gonna have the sheriff. He is going to participate online. All of our elected officials are going to get an opportunity to speak. I'd like to delve into that with the sheriff when he has his opportunity to speak.
And Chairman, Supervisor Borelli, to your point, I'm going to get into that a little bit in option D, because that does include the compensation adjustments that the sheriff requested just a few weeks ago. So if there's no more questions on...
It's like there's just a few more slides. Let's get through those and we'll go to the...
Thank you, Chairman.
Yep.
So here we go. The last option, option D, this again is not recommended. It puts the budget about $1.9 million in a deficit. It provides very little flexibility in future years. What's included here? So 2 additional things. In addition to everything we've discussed in option A, B, and C, this includes a compensation package for the sheriff deputies. It is $500,000 in raises in fiscal 26. And then over 3 years, it's a total of $1.9 million in raises. What that equates to, because the year 1 raises roll into year 2 and on, and the year 2 raises roll into year 3 and on, what that equates to is $7.3 million in additional personnel expense over the next 5 years. So that's one component that is included in option C. And then the other is the sheriff requested a significant upgrade to his Axon body camera package. It essentially triples the annual cost to the general fund from $300,000 a year to $900,000 a year with the addition of several different options to that camera package, camera and software and everything that's involved with it. When it comes to policy, what do we do with the surplus fund balance in the general fund? As I said, it exceeds the target fund balance. We're targeting 50 million, and so we have a projection that says we're going to have 75 million in there at the end of the year, end of fiscal 26. And so we can program that a number of different ways. It's up to the board to decide that and give us some direction. This is kind of an a la carte menu. You can mix and match here with option 1, 2, and 3. Option 1 would include designating specific funding. I believe it was Supervisor Lettman that, or maybe Supervisor Lingenfelter, that asked about the substation up north. That is one thing that could be funded. We also have Phase 2B of the Law and Justice Center. That comes with a $6 million estimated price tag. That could be funded as a specific project. Option 2 could be to just designate a sum of that surplus as undesignated contingency in the CIP fund. So if future capital needs arise, it's already been placed there and the board can act on that. And then option 3, and this is the policy that I referred to, I would like to see the county start planning for those future infrastructure needs. And so we have $25 million sitting there in our projections. So taking that into consideration, saying as a board, we would like to adopt a policy that says whatever that fund surplus is at the end of a given fiscal year, we're going to designate finance to move 25% of it, 50% of it into capital for future needs. The other piece, the county has a number of properties that it owns that it is not utilizing. When the Legal Services Center project is completed, which again is slated by the end of fiscal 26, that's going to free up some additional buildings that have value that the county can sell. And so knowing that we are growing as a county, knowing we are going to have future infrastructure needs, designate per policy that any sale proceeds from buildings or land that the county owns would go into CIP for future needs.
Director Mournian, if I may, option 3 is what I had suggested, where we take a percentage of that, maybe up to $5 million or wherever, and we put that into a fund. And the reason I suggested that is I was here when we built this building and we built the jail and several other projects. The way we did that is we had a dedicated revenue source and we were able to do projects in today's dollars because we know that projects escalate every single year. It's going to cost more to do a project in 2, 3, 4, 5 years than it is to do it today. And my question was, what if we start creating that dedicated revenue source by socking away a percentage or up to 5% of this general fund surplus into a CIP dedicated fund so that you could do projects in today's dollars and then pay them off over a number of years rather than just as you go. And that helps us, beat inflation. It's going to take, you have an estimate in here for Law and Justice Center Phase 2B, estimated $6 million. Well, it's not going to be $6 million in a year or 2 years. So if we were able to project, we were going to pay this building off. We paid this building off, I think, in less than 15 or maybe less than 20. We paid that one off in the jail, $175 million project in like 11 years. If we were able to create some sort of a dedicated revenue source to allow us to get back into funding capital projects that are necessary like that, I think that's a huge benefit to the county taxpayers, saving them millions of dollars.
Chairman Lingenfelter,
Yeah.
Good point. I will just say that the big difference between what we had previously that financed this building and the jail was that we had a recurring revenue source, whereas a portion of a fund balance that is budgetary savings that may or may not exist each year is not something that I think you can finance against because it's not recurring, it's not guaranteed, it's not something that you can bond against. So I think what we're left with is the option to continue with the pay-as-you-go method that the county has been utilizing. We do have a healthy fund balance, and so the board could certainly look at what are the current needs of the county and designate specific projects, or just knowing that we're growing and that we're going to have future needs, start to set that aside. Those surplus fund balances are part of the Treasurer's pooled investments, so they are going to earn interest and grow over time. But that would be my recommendation.
At least we would implement a policy that would start to sock some money away every year. That's a new thing, and that's a good thing for the taxpayers. I think if we, as a board, recognize then that we want new capital projects. Other commentary, Supervisor Letman.
I just had a couple of general questions before we get into the timeline. Back on slide 69, we talked about the healthy fund balances for the TV district and the library district, I believe. And you chose to do a sweep of funds out of the library district, but not the TV district. Can you explain why that would be?
Supervisor Letman, great question. So the library district has a much higher fund balance than the TV district. And the TV district is, I'd say, more prone to immediate and pressing needs. You know, if we have a tower that gets damaged during a storm or something like that, and I think we could probably all agree that the likelihood of a tower being damaged during a monsoon is probably more likely to occur than one of the library buildings being damaged during a monsoon. And so we want to maintain what surplus the TV district has in case those needs come up. And so when we looked at the 5-year projection for the TV district, we kept a much higher, as a percentage of annual operating expense, we kept a much higher balance for the TV district, than the library district. The library district, we kept about 6 months over that 5-year projection. We wanted to keep at least 6 months of operating expenses as a minimum fund balance. And so that's why we landed on sweeping from the library versus the TV district.
Okay, on page 70 was the numbers of the projection of the revenues, the JLBC versus the executive versus Mohave County. And looking at FY26, this is my opinion only for the county projection. I think you're too conservative. Response? I mean, this is my first year at this. You're the pro.
Supervisor Letman, when we look at the current year growth rate, 3.2% is what I was comfortable with. JLBC does tend to be more conservative, as you can see from the numbers on the slide, than what is presented in the executive budget. But we bumped that up against what has the county's actual, growth rate been in the past and then year to date, current year. And so what we're seeing, the most current data is right around that 3.2% mark, knowing that there's a number of uncertainties, broad economic uncertainties. I did not feel comfortable increasing that closer to JLBC's projection.
Could I ask what a tenth of a point would be worth in that? Just off the top of your head, any idea? Like if I said if we suggested take it to 3.3, what would that mean?
Supervisor Letman.
Just a guesstimate.
0.1%. I believe that would equate to a couple $100,000, $200,000 to $300,000.
Okay. Thank you.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Luke, do we have the total value of the taxable property in the county? Real property.
You can wait just a second. We can pull that up. Supervisor, it's about 2.7 billion.
That's the combination of residential, commercial, and business personal property.
Supervisor Gold, that's correct. That is all property.
It was 2.6 billion.
2.7 billion.
2.7 billion. It looks like you could adopt the truth in taxation rate rather than your proposed rate, and you would still end up with a $21.8 million additional surplus.
Supervisor Gould, I'll trust your math on that, but what that would do is put us into a pretty hefty, we have 25 and a half, almost 25.6 in that surplus balance right now. And so if we're drawing that down to 21 million by decreasing our recurring revenue, then that's going to put us $5 million in the hole on the structural side of things. And so that is going to continue in future years. And so that's going to quickly, the $5 million drawdown in fiscal 26 is then going to be another $5 million next year, absent any other changes, and continue year over year. And so,
yeah, I understand that, but you said that 25 million is additional reserve over and above the recommended reserve.
it is Supervisor Gould. And so we're saying that is available for one-time expenses.
The other problem is if you start accumulating money in a capital improvement fund, there's really nothing that prohibits the whim of the board to spend that money on other things because it's not protected. If you're going to create a fund, what should be done is it should go to the voters and let the voters vote or protect that fund so that those funds can't be spent unless the voters release us to spend that money on something other than what we've told them was the intended use. We've seen this at the state level. When there was no even clouds on the horizon, Governor Napolitano spent the rainy day fund. There's kind of a rule that says if there's money, politicians will spend it. I'd like to see some kind of protection on that if we're going to accumulate a fund. Something to think about. I guess the attorneys have to figure out whether we can actually put that to the question to the voters or not. But I think the voters would have more, or the property owners would have more faith in us actually spending that money on what we told them we would spend it on if there's some kind of control on it.
Supervisor Gould, I take your point. I will just offer one thought on that, is that one thing that we try to avoid is significant fluctuations in the property tax year over year. And so if we were to reduce the property tax levy rate to the TNT rate, to start drawing down that surplus balance, using it to pay for recurring revenues, I think what you see is in a couple of years, we've been in a situation where now we have to, the TNT rate goes down year after year. And so if let's say we stuck with that for FY26 and then in FY27.
Well, it goes down because the property values increases.
Correct. But if we can.
The levy does not go down.
Unfortunately, though, the county's expenses continue
Currently,
to
the consumer price index is 2.4. Fuel has fallen 6%, and they don't even put fuel in there. And in this case, fuel would actually reduce the 2.4, and the TNT has a 2% inflation increase built into it.
Well, I will just say that if we let's look at some of the contracts that the county has, Supervisor Gould. Most of our technology contracts, and this is not something that's unique to the county government. I think it's just that industry. A lot of those contracts have built-in increases of 5% or more each year, and so while CPI may be much lower than that, there's a lot of expenses that the county has that exceeds CPI as they grow year over year. Another thing that we could look at is if we look around the state. The sheriff's office is a perfect example. Supervisor Lettman is proposing, that we offer some pretty marked compensation adjustments for sheriff deputies. Supervisor Borelli also mentioned it. And when we look around at the other counties and neighboring municipalities, we see increases in compensation that exceed CPI by a wide margin. And so it's a useful metric, but I don't think it encompasses the entire array of expenses that the county experiences year over year.
Probably not, because then it would be called the county price index and not the consumer price. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Want to wrap up the presentation? Great.
I just wanted to go real quickly. Our timeline, as you know, we have a tentative and a final budget adoption. Those are scheduled for June. And so any feedback that the board provides today will inform that tentative budget that we present on June 2nd. Final budget is scheduled for June 16th. And then in early August, we bring back the tax rates for the board to acknowledge and adopt. And that's per statute. And so just to summarize real quickly, our recommendation is that the board adopt option B as discussed. That includes those revenue measures of the tax rate swap and the library sweep. We recommend funding PTO buyback for FY26 and then also adopting a fund balance policy, including some sort of designation for a portion of that surplus fund balance for planning purposes. The total budget as proposed is $574 million. That's general fund and all other funds. It's about $130 of general fund operating expenses, about $30 million in capital projects, and then just point out property tax and state share revenues make up about 85% of overall revenues for the general fund. And our recommendations are intended to provide long-term financial stability and sustainability. Those were the two key things that we kept in mind. Very quickly, just a few slides on zero-based budgeting. The board directed the Economic Development Department to go down the zero-based budget road. You've been provided with, I believe it was about 25 pages or so of information from that department. I'll break it down real quickly. Zero-based budgeting calls for first to identify the key program activities that a department or a budget decision unit has within its scope. And so economic development is comprised of business retention and expansion, business attraction and investment, tourism and destination development, and foreign trade zone activities. You were presented with three different options. So the basic option is just under $400,000. It includes 3 full-time equivalent positions. That's included in the FY26 budget. The only real difference there from FY25 is moving 1 part-time position from a 0.67 FTE up to a full-time equivalent position. And then the enhanced version was includes the addition of 2 part-time employees at total $626,000 in expense. And then the third level that they were calling the optimum level of funding is about $1.2 million. It includes not only those additional 2 part-time positions, but also a full-time marketing professional to work within that business attraction and investment component of the department. And then lastly, both the second and third funding levels include additional funding for things like additional travel to conferences, business development type events, expanding their program activities, establishing a revolving loan fund to be used for business development, purchasing additional technology resources such as software or an enhanced website, and then also providing for targeted advertising campaigns, countywide type advertising campaigns. And that's all I have on that. And with that, I'd be happy to answer
Supervisor Gould.
questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Mornian, there was a vote of the Board of Supervisors that requested the removal of tourism from the description of what the duties of the Economic Development Department was to do. But we still had about $80,000 in here for tourism. Thought that was interesting.
Supervisor Gould, I would have to ask the Economic Development Director to come up here. I believe
I think what you can do is look back at the item that was placed that had the new Board of Supervisors reaffirm the targeted industries that the board wanted economic development to pursue. And I think that there was some adjustment of the targeted industries that this Board of Supervisors was comfortable with pursuing.
And another thing, I don't know how the good, better, best close got into the definition of zero-based budgeting. I use the good, better, best close in my business to get people to buy more expensive air conditioning. But yet we're using this. By zero-based budgeting, I want to know I want to get to zero. I want to know what the bare bones is. I don't want to have good, better, best options. That was not really my motive behind this. It's a close technique to get people to buy more expensive things is what it is. You have people and their personality traits will pick. Some people will pick the middle price. Some people pick the low price. Some people pick the high price. But I'm just curious how that got wrapped up into zero-based budgeting.
Supervisor Gould, the package that was presented and put together by the Economic Development Department was their best effort, I believe, based on their understanding for the need for an Economic Development Department of what could be provided at what different levels of funding. And as you know, in years past, and I believe Chairman Lingenfelter had a part in this from previous board decision, there was additional funding that had been provided to that department in the past that used to be tied to new construction, value, and property. And so they've seen a decreased level of funding over the years. And so that basic level is encompassing the fact that, yes, they could do more with more resources. The department felt, and I tend to agree, that what they're doing now with the level of resources that is provided to them for the functions that they provide is pretty close to a bare minimum. So while I can see your point with the good, better, best analogy, I'll respectfully disagree.
So the revenue that's generated by the additional is a percentage of the building permit revenue when.
I believe when vacant property, the first new assessment, I think that has now gone away. Is that not correct, Manager Elters?
I'm sorry, everyone. Mr. Chairman, that is correct. It was for new construction, and it was only 25% of new construction tax revenues that came into the county general fund annually.
And it was a one-time assessment.
It was a one-time
repetitive
assessment.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Manager Elters.
since I have the floor, if I may,
Sure.
it related to the zero-based budgeting and what was presented. I was part of that discussion, so I'm sitting here silently listening to the discussion, and what I wanted to share with you is that the presentation we made to the board that explained what zero-based budgeting meant to staff, so we knew what the board needed and how we would approach it. That zero-based budgeting presentation consisted of and was based on bare minimum, and then a next level, a more optimal and the ideal level as to how a department services are provided. That concept was taken, and when the board directed staff to develop zero-based budgeting for economic development, that was the approach that was used, is minimum, bare minimum, absolutely just the base to provide services for a department to continue to exist. And then from there, what would be needed to have a middle ground, basically, and an ideal. And in discussion with various board members related to what economic development is and what it needs to be and the opportunity and how we increase our tax base, it was clear to us that while the bare minimum would serve as the base, there was a desire by the board to understand and to know what an interim level expenditure would achieve and an optimum level, and that is what the department provided. So, that was the effort by the staff to respond to the direction by the board to prepare zero-based budgeting for economic development and to do it consistent with what we understand zero-based budgeting to mean, and respond to the board. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you. Do we have a couple more slides?
That is it, Chairman.
Okay. It is 11:50, almost noon. Now we go into the opportunity to speak for our elected officials. Each one of our elected officials, I'm gonna just ask if you want to say anything. If you do want to say anything, I would ask that you limit it to 10 minutes. If you can't say what you need to say in 10 minutes, we'll give you a little bit more time. But that's just sort of the guardrails. So first, I'm going to ask if the county attorney's office, anybody present from the county attorney's office, and would you like to speak today to the board? Thank you. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman oh my goodness. Chairman, Board of Supervisors, Mr. County Manager. My name is Amanda Clarehout. I work for obviously the county attorney's office. I've been a deputy county attorney there for about 7 years now. I'm the acting chief deputy when James Shotman is out of the office or away. He is in trial today. And I know Mr. Smith presented to the board last week and went through our slides for our office. So I'm really just here to represent the office to ask any direct questions that the board may have based on that presentation that perhaps was not thought of or asked to Mr. Smith. In the office, I am one of 2 prosecutors that do or prosecute the dangerous crimes against children. So any sexual-based offenses against kids is what we deal with, me and another prosecutor for the whole county. We also deal with any adult sexually based offenses for the whole county goes through me and through another prosecutor. She is pulling back a little bit, so I mainly do those cases, and I'm the supervisor of that unit, of our 2-person unit. I'm also part of the felony trial group, which consists of me, the other prosecutor who does the dangerous crimes against children with me, and then Mr. Shotman as well, who is in trial today. I know that Mr. Smith talked to you about what our office does and how we're understaffed and different burnout with our prosecutors that we're facing, which is kind of what we're facing with the prosecutor who's pulling away from the child crimes and really delving into the trial group a little bit more. So just here to, again, represent the office and answer any questions that you might have based on Mr. Smith's presentation.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the Board of Supervisors related to the county attorney's office at this time? Hearing none, if something comes up, we'll call you back. And thank you for being here today. Also, Luke, I wanted to say thanks for the presentation. I didn't say thank you. You did a good job. Is the county assessor's office available? No comments today? Okay, thank you. County recorder's office. I see them almost front row. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We have heard of the 2 out of 3 new initiatives I place into my budget. One is for a pay increase for my chief deputy, 3%, and the other one is for a progression series for the voter registration staff members. Last year, we did a progression series for the recording staff. One item that I did place into my budget for a new initiative is a department vehicle. The recorder's office doesn't have a vehicle at this time, so we are using fleet services or personnel vehicles. So I would like to continue the conversation with each of you and hopefully see that in the tentative budget. The recorder's office continues to have revenue for FY25. In many years, we have exceeded our $1.5 million revenue for recording documents from the tax deed sale that we just completed. That was about $25,000 that went into revenue as well. The voter registration side is also receives revenue when we receive reimbursement from entities that are on the ballot. And for FY25, that is close to $200,000 as well. I'd just like to thank everyone for the budget process, having the opportunity to speak to you, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Recorder Durst. Does any of the board have questions for the recorder at this time? Supervisor Martin.
Regarding your request for a vehicle, has there been any kind of analysis done as to what it would cost you to have a vehicle for a year assigned to your department versus you getting it from fleet services?
So we have not had the evidence showing that cost over the years. Our voter registration recorder's office haven't been out in the community in the past. It's something my staff and voters are very important to me. We would like to continue that education, doing voter registration outreach, assisting veterans and DD-214s at any tri-state community events, things like that. So there currently is not a monetary proof that a department vehicle is needed, but I would like to request one.
Okay, can I ask County Manager, have we looked into this at all to see what the benefits or lack thereof are?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Martin, we did receive a couple of requests from a couple different departments, with the recorder being one of them. And in a nutshell, through facilities, through motor pool, under Public Works and Finance, looking at it, in a nutshell, what they have now in the way of vehicle needs is being met through the motor pool, and the cost of it is under $5,000. And assigning a vehicle to a department is almost about 3 times that much. It's closer to $14,000. So we responded to both departments' inquiries and recommended that they stay the course. And when the demand on a vehicle to get out in the community reaches that number where it makes sense to assign a vehicle, that would be the time to do it. It's really from from our response, it comes down to just cost and dollars and cents. We are in no position to dictate to departments, elected or otherwise, how to do their business. But their needs are being met through motor pool, and the cost is under $5,000 now. If they have a need in the future, it will be accommodated. If the need in the future increases, it will be accommodated by motor pool. And when that cost reaches the cost of assigning a vehicle to the department, that would be the time to do it. So that has been our response to the recorder and to anyone else who has inquired about it.
So if I got this right, if the expenses that they've incurred in their general operation is approximately $5,000 a year, the cost of assigning a car to them would be triple that, about $15,000 a year. Do you dispute that? Can you dispute that?
Supervisor Martin, that is correct. As I stated in the past, we haven't truly commuted throughout the community. We do have satellite offices in Lake Havasu and Bullhead, that we do not assist those employees to the best of our ability as a department. We have continued to use personnel vehicles for many things in the election process, going to or to the voting locations, having staff members drive their personal vehicle, which is oftentimes may not be reliable or truly a equal reimbursement to that staff member for the wear and tear on their car.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Supervisor Borelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Elters, can you help me out and explain this to me? If the county already owns the vehicle, paid for it, explain to me what those costs are to the department. What do those costs cover?
Chairman Lingenfelter, Supervisor Borelli, I would like to ask Steve Latosky, who has an intimate knowledge of these numbers, to come down and explain it, if that's okay with you.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
Yes. Chairman Lingenfelter, members of the board, Supervisor Borelli, as I understand the question, the question concerns basically the expense of an additional assigned vehicle.
Going to repeat your question, Supervisor Borelli?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, Director. The vehicle's already paid for,
Right.
and there's a cost to use the vehicle. Explain to me what those costs are.
So they break down in two components. One is the operation and maintenance of the vehicle. The operation and maintenance of a vehicle is 40 cents per mile, and that pays for all fuel, all preventive maintenance, vehicle repairs, etc., heavy maintenance, and even body damage if it came to that. And then in addition to the 40 cents per mile, it's a $275 a month fixed fee. So your operation and maintenance is $275 a month plus 40 cents a mile. There's one other component to the cost, and that is the vehicle replacement. So our vehicle replacement fund, 604, is the master fund by which vehicles are replaced in accordance with the vehicle use policy. In this case, a typical automotive vehicle is 6 years or 120,000 miles. So that for a passenger car, the vehicle replacement fee would be approximately $400 a month, as I understand it. And those vehicle replacement costs actually vary by the type of vehicle, if they're medium or large SUV. So what we like to do is have the end department pay that vehicle use fee so that we have a fund actually already paid for, almost just like you would save for your own vehicle purchase when that vehicle comes due for replacement. So operation and maintenance, as I laid out, and then the vehicle use fee. If you drive the vehicle approximately 12,000 miles a year, my math is approximately $12,900 a year in expenses. But that's fuel included in everything.
Mr. Chairman and colleagues, maybe we need to rethink how this is being managed. I mean, I was in the legislature for one term, 2 years. Actually, the time I was in the Senate, 8 years. Okay, I got a 2018 Chevy Cruze. I got 160,000 miles on that car. It didn't cost me that kind of money to change my oil, change the tires, because I burned up a lot of tires. Even the fuel costs, I didn't even come close to the number you're saying, and $14,000. And we don't replace vehicles like we do in the civilian world, if I may. We get to go and trade it in and try to get something out of it. The county, we auction them. Maybe we need to look at the way how this fleet management is structured. Because I can't wrap my head around these kind of numbers for a vehicle that's, you said 12,000 miles. Hell, I did that, and I did 30,000 miles a year just at the legislature. I mean, just for...
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Director Latosky, so it's 40 cents a mile, $275 a month.
Yes.
plus the 400 for the replacement
For
fund.
replacement.
Okay.
Speaking of a passenger.
Thank you, sir. I had a question for the recorder. Madam Recorder, is there a statute that requires you to go out and do voter registration outreach?
There is not a statute that makes that. However, it is beneficial for the voter rolls.
There are political parties that do that at no cost to the government. And my concern with having a government official go out and register people is not that you would be biased, but you might have some issues in other counties where you have a biased recorder that goes out and gathers signatures at locations that might favor one political party over another political party. And this is historic. I got myself in a argument with a previous recorder over the same issue. That I'm not sure that that's really the purpose of government. If you didn't have to go do voter registration outreach, would you still need the car?
We would continue to travel to our satellite offices, Bullhead and Havasu, to meet with those staff members or have them drive that vehicle here to attend our meetings as well. We would still conduct in-person early voting. We would still need transportation to those facilities, and we still do outreach for the recording side for veterans. Also, when there's new subdivisions, we do need the voter registration database requires a PIN on every residential address for every voter to be registered in the proper precinct. Sorry. So oftentimes there could be a time where we need to travel more to tribal land to see the footage of that landscape and how those homes are being constructed as condos or unit 1s, unit 2s, and all of that, because it's not typically on the GIS mapping.
So you have to physically go out and touch every property where a voter is?
Not every property, no.
Okay.
But every property needs a PIN
Only on a new development?
if it's not within the GIS mapping system.
Okay. Oh, thank you, ma'am.
Mhm.
Thank you, Chairman.
You're welcome. Other questions? Recorder Durst, one question for me. How's your travel budget? I mean, you're doing a lot more than what I remember previous recorders doing. So, would you say that you have enough travel budget?
For the upcoming FY26 budget, we have increased that within our budget currently. A lot of budget or travel we have done in the past has come from Mohave funding in order to get certifications and things like that. I typically drive my own personal vehicle. That does take away from the cost of motor pool because it is expensive for one trip to motor pool one trip in a vehicle from motor pool to Phoenix is about $600.
Yeah, in interdepartmental transfer is $600 to do a round trip to Phoenix. Is that?
I do not. Thank you.
I'd ask Director Otoski to come up real quick. I appreciate you coming back down to the podium. So to do say it's recorder's office or any other department that needs to have a fleet vehicle to make a turnaround trip, a day turnaround trip to, let's say, the Capitol or something like that, is it actually $600? Because if that's true, it would seem like it would almost be beneficial for the department to just go into the commercial market and get a Avis rental car or something for a day for $100. Is it $600 a day?
I would certainly like to look at our rental car rates in that regard. Rental car rates are approximately $20-something a day, and there is a mileage charge. However, when I'm trying to do the rough math in my head, even driving it, 500 miles at 40 cents a mile is only $200, and I would have to look at our numbers. That seems quite high to me.
Maybe the recorder's office can get with your office and maybe even send the board back something, because we don't want to. We want to make sure that
100%.
it's not cost prohibitive, I guess I would say.
And it does pencil out per mile because we supply what's called a fuel card, a gas card. So the driver utilizes the gas card at a Circle K or whatever commercial station they use in the Phoenix area, let's say. That charges back to Fleet Services. and then the department isn't billed specifically for the gas, but actually by the mileage rate. But we'll get that full.
Just the number $600 a day perked my ears up, and I think some of the other board members too.
And I do want to correct the one statement I made with regard to the estimate at 12,000 miles a year driving in an assigned vehicle. The estimate I gave for the passenger car of $12,900 does include the vehicle use fee, does include the savings by which we would try to achieve to replace the vehicle. So that's operation and maintenance and vehicle replacement.
Thank you for the clarification. Recorder Durst, any other questions or comments to the board?
I would just like to clarify, it's not $600 a day for a trip to Phoenix. But if you had a meeting at 8 a.m. in Phoenix, you're being charged for, we'll say it's on a Tuesday, you're being charged for getting the vehicle on a Monday, having it Monday, having it Tuesday, and then returning it on a Wednesday.
Sounds like something we need to look into.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate that. Okay, we're going to go to the sheriff's office. Do we have Sheriff Schuster with us?
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you very much for your time. I know it's been a long meeting already for everybody. I did come in and speak with you last month, and I expressed the needs of the sheriff's office, which I don't believe was anything new. I've been discussing this since I took office back in 2017. A couple things I want to cover, and just listening to some of the questions that came up, and then I'll open it up to questions you might have of me. My goals have not changed. Our needs have not changed. I have tried diligently every year to be very frugal with the funding we have. I have been told repeatedly that, funding is going to be tight this year. During the COVID years, we asked for nothing. I've always tried to do my part and still ensure the growth that we need. One thing I'll bring up to the new board members, over the course of my time, we have frozen against my own judgment many of our positions just to use that funding to do nominal increases, and they were much needed. So we basically came to the county and we said, look, we will do our part. If you can match what I can put in, we can increase the starting wage, and we've been very successful. And I want to thank the prior board, and during both my first two terms, and this board, because I know there is an outstanding support of law enforcement, or we wouldn't even be talking about this. We're actually in a very good place right now. Yes, I do have 7 vacancies. Everything that has been said is correct. And I wanted to take a minute and thank Sam. I want to thank Luke and his staff, because your sheriff can be very, very demanding and very persistent. And sometimes I get ahead of myself, but at the end of the day, I'm demanding and persistent, because we need to be providing top-notch law enforcement service and public safety services to our citizens. And in order to do that, I have to have the staffing. So the question that came up earlier, I believe it was Supervisor Borelli, I had asked for I had made it clear that $900,000 would pretty much correct completely our mid-range and our top-out pay. Our starting pay, we got it up to be very competitive locally, and that's what we needed to do. But the problem we're facing is, if I have a new hire come in and they're looking at all the different agencies, they see what they start here and what we start over here, and at the end of the day, all right, the starting's close, but if I work 10 years at this location, I'll be $10 higher at A, B, or C's agency. That's the problem we face. I can't guarantee that raising the pay is going to make more people want to do this job. It's a problem nationwide, but I will go back to the increase we did in the jail. If you recall, we had over close to 50 vacancies. We increased the rate of pay, and almost overnight, we drastically cut those numbers. So I think it is a big part of it, and there's only a couple other things we could try afterwards. What I want to do, what I'm trying to do, is have enough funding to be competitive and to be at or at least close to our local surrounding agencies. In doing the math, it's not $900,000. It's going to cost about $500,000 this year to correct that, with an additional $180 roughly next year. And then from that point on, it should really be relatively budget neutral, because a lot of my staff are already topped out. So we're just going to continue to top them out to put them on par with their equals, allowing new people to come in where I can actually offer them better pay.
Supervisor Borelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sheriff, you had said you need, it's not 900,000, it's 500,000. How many deputies would that be if they were full-time, if you had those positions? 500,000, how many deputies would that cover on a full-time?
Chairman Supervisor Borelli, great question. So I would make this concession, and I'm very thankful for the deputy that you provided during the last meeting, Mr. Chairman. I would forego staffing increases on the deputy side this year, and I would put any and all money towards doing that increase. And again, the number is 500,000. I truly believe that if we can correct the mid-range and the top-end pay, we have a much better advantage point to start recruiting at a better level. So I think that I don't believe that's a large expense, 500,000 in the big scope of things to completely correct our remaining compression issue. We've made tremendous headway. And I think we can resolve a lot of it this year. Other things that I'd like to point out, Luke and his staff, they're amazing, and I bug them too much. One thing that we had talked about, and I don't think you mentioned it today, there's always additional savings in my budget. You know, if we don't fill the spots, we're going to have salary savings that will go back into the general fund. We all understand this. But right now, I have 5 people that have retired on paper, but they're in a deferred retirement program. So the county is budgeting their portion of the public safety retirement, but we're not paying that. So that's $300,000 or $400,000 sitting in our budget that we know is going to go back to the county. And that's going to be ongoing. There's always going to be 1, 2, 3 people in that program. So I don't see that it would hurt us. I really don't see that it would hurt us. And I look forward to the day that I say, look, I'm fully staffed. Now let's get some more bodies. But let's fix one thing at a time. And the fix this year is $500,000 with another $180,000 next year on top of that. And I think we should be good.
Yeah, thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you. Other board members? Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sheriff, you were speaking of you have employees in the DROP program.
Correct.
The money that you were speaking of that goes back to the county, that's the county's portion of the retirement?
Supervisor Gould, correct.
And the other half goes into your DROP employees fund, DROP fund?
Yeah, the other half, it ceases. So it's actually a raise for the employee because they are actually, the retirement check is what goes into the fund.
So it goes into their DROP account, correct? It's their money when they retire?
Yes, sir.
So half of that money returns to the county then, compared to an employee that's not in the DROP program?
Maybe, can you rephrase that, Supervisor Gould? I'm not understanding.
I believe it's the payment that is no longer going into their retirement fund. Half of that money goes into their own DROP account. It's been a while since I was the retirement chairman in the Senate, so I might be wrong.
Sure. My understanding is once you enter the deferred retirement plan, the employee's portion that he would normally pay in on a biweekly basis to public safety retirement ceases. So he's no longer paying in. The portion that goes into his retirement fund would be the retirement check he would have received had he left and not entered drops. The portion I'm referring to is the county's portion, and Luke can certainly tell you the percentage amount, but it's significant. Over 50% of the county is paying for public safety retirement benefits, and that shouldn't be the case on those employees.
Yeah, well, I understood it was half went to the employee's fund and half went to the employer. But we can figure that out. Thanks, Sheriff. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Sheriff, this is Supervisor Lingenfelter. I'm glad that you gave us that breakdown. And I'd like to see perhaps a little bit of the surplus that we have this year go to that 500,000 and 180,000 in fiscal year 25, 26, and 26, 27. Representing, half of my district being up north and Washington County, Utah, St. George area is the hottest county in the whole country right now. I'd hate to see less deputies out there. I think every district needs needs deputies. I mean, we hear, about theft and all kinds of different things that happen out there, and it all starts with fighting lawlessness. So I'd hate to see less deputies out there, that's for sure. But I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that plugged into the final budget myself. Supervisor Borelli, you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree, the sheriff is one thing about recruiting, and this is nationwide. Being in law enforcement is not a very popular thing, but what is extremely important, if we can't recruit, we need to retain. And we need to retain to the levels where we're not getting poached by other agencies. California's having the same kind of issue. They go through the sheriff's academy, and next thing you know, a city poaches them right when they get out of the academy. So that's a big expense. When we put them through the academy, we need to be able to keep them and retain them. And I think $500,000 to retain qualified professionals that are already proven true. I mean, I think it's cheaper in the long run, and then we can address the recruiting effort. I mean, this county is the 5th largest county in the country, and he's understaffed, but retention is just as important, if not more, than recruitment.
It's a good point. I think regionally, and correct me if I'm wrong, Sheriff, but we're all chasing Havasu right now. Is Havasu the agency that everybody is chasing as far as pay right now?
Mr. Chairman, that's
Regionally.
correct. In fact, Lake Havasu Police Department is in the process of doing a cost analysis with sister-sized agencies throughout the state. So we anticipate they're going to go up again. In looking at the projection we came up with, this puts us pretty much on par with them. I want to be greedy. I want to say, give me 800,000 and I'll go above them, because we have to have something that brings the draw in. Now, we have greatly enhanced our recruiting efforts. We keep our thumb on the pulse. We know a lot of officers, not just in Mohave County, but around the state, like the sheriff's office. They like the way we run our program. But if I can't lateral them in, if they got 10 years somewhere else and I can't match the pay they're getting there, I don't get them. And it's understandable. So that's why the need for that mid-range and that top out, it's so vital. It's vital, and Supervisor Borelli is correct. Retain the ones you have. The 10-year, 12-year deputy, they're irreplaceable. And they will leave under conditions, and a lot of those conditions do revolve around money, unfortunately, because it's a hot pocket job now. Everybody is in demand, and the officers, they know this. So we're doing our part on our end to run a great department. We have a tremendous culture, and I think we're going to do wonderful things, but I don't want to put the cart before the horse and keep chasing positions when in reality the first step really needs to be fix the compensation. We all know that 30 positions down is the number, and it's actually higher than that, but that'll get us where we need to be. That's just not this year.
Supervisor Borelli, are you finished? Thank you, sir. Any further questions for the sheriff? Supervisor Borelli.
Just thought of this. Since Lake Havasu City is the largest contributor in revenue to the county, would the sheriff consider not charging a jail fee to Lake Havasu City?
Actually,
you can remain silent on that one.
No, I'd like to answer it if I may. Down the road, we're talking about a potential jail taxing district. If that ever comes through, I'd be more than happy to waive the fee. It would really be heartburn for our financial division. So I think they're rolling their heads saying no, but down the road, it's certainly a discussion that we could have.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sheriff. Madam Treasurer. Thank you, sir. The constables.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Supervisors.
Afternoon.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you. I want to start by saying that when I was a new constable, I got a significant amount of field training from 3 long-tenured constables. and found it to be invaluable. Since then, our county has experienced 4 brand new constables, and at the direction of 2 of the previous supervisors, we were told that we were not to do any field training. It wasn't our job. Clearly, I'm sure you all know we've had several stumbles and issues that have cast a cloud over us. At our budget workshops, we have requested some extra funding for some training and some travel expense. We've also been blessed with a new constable with extensive background working for Mohave County Probation and other law enforcement agencies that's willing to do the training. So I'd like to introduce Constable John Deese to explain what we're asking for.
Chairman Lingerfelter, board members. My name is John Dees. Obviously, I'm the newly elected constable for the Justice Precinct 3, which includes Bullhead City, Fort Mohave, Mohave Valley. What we're looking at asking the board is for $3,000 additional dollars in our travel budget to cover 5 constables for training. Currently, we do have a travel expense budget that we do every year. But the $2,000 of what we would be asking for would be for our 4 constables, which would include Kingman, Mohave, or Bullhead City, and Lake Havasu. And then the $1,000 additional dollars obviously would go to our North Canyon, which would go to St. George, Utah, as he is actually one of our firearms instructors, and he comes down quite often to where we can get additional training. So it's basically $500 per constable, with additional the $1,000 being for Constable Hogard. The reason for that is we're looking at doing quarterly trainings at least every quarter. We're currently in the process of writing some grants for non-lethal options like tasers. We're going to get some other constables up to date with the new Repulse pepper spray. It's not pepper spray, but it's Repulse. We're also going to be training them on batons, and we're going to look at doing some self-defense training. This also opens the doors, gentlemen, for us to train with other agencies. Like if the Sheriff's Department would allow us to come in and train with them, the Bullhead City Police Department is actually opening their arms for us to train with them as well, to teach us how to do building clearing. Other, vital things to keep us safe. One of the things that we do is we work alone, and I think that this extra $3,000 would give us the opportunity to keep these officers or constables safe. Any questions?
Open it up to the board. Any questions for the constables? Supervisor Martin.
Just to clarify something that I heard, like I say, as a new guy up here, I know that the relationship between past boards and the constables hasn't been the best. I've heard that over the years, and it was for a number of reasons, and I'll say that maybe some of it was not deserved, but then again, some of it was probably justified. I think that, as a former law enforcement, I understand what your duties are, and, I've often wondered, I said, well, we put you in a position, you're not a certified officer in the state of Arizona, is that right? I mean,
Not required, you're correct.
it's not required. But you're doing essentially a job that law enforcement officers do, and you're facing the same risk that the guy you go up to serve papers on, he don't care whether you're a constable or a deputy sheriff. If he don't like you, which he most likely won't, and decides to take you on, you're put in a pretty bad position. I think there's been several constables have been killed in the line of duty in the last 5 years, I think. So I recognize the need for additional training for you folks, but at the same time, I think we got to also understand they are not law enforcement officers, and to be thrust into those kind of law enforcement positions where we're sending them into danger. We need to understand that and say, okay, we're either going to get on board with everything you want to do, or we need to back off and say, wait a minute, don't do this. It's a definition of a job, of what you're doing. But I know, I've seen what these guys do and the situations they've been put into, and it seems kind of weird to me that they're not certified law enforcement officers, and yet we say here these agencies are wanting are offering them to train with us. So what are we doing here? I mean, are we going to train you to get you post-certified, or what do you guys want to do?
Thank you for the question. We are technically law enforcement officers, although we're not AZ Post certified. We do a significant training every January and July. We also do our 70-hour firearms AZ Post qualifications so that we're AZ Post firearms trained. And we recognize the cloud that's been cast over us, and that's what we're trying to rectify. We're working right now on some written policies that sort of mirror the sheriff's policy regarding use of force, firearms trainings, and that kind of thing. And that's why we're asking for a little bit of extra travel budget so we can meet quarterly to take care of these issues. But thank you for the question.
Just to say this, I think that training is important. When I was in law enforcement, if you don't train, you don't react. You really don't. And, from my standpoint, I sure wouldn't have an issue keeping these folks, give them a little bit more training. So it's officer safety. And, whether some people realize it or not, or even believe it or not, I think you're part of the team. So thank you.
Well, Supervisor Martin, we appreciate that. As being one of the elected law enforcement officers or positions in the county, this is the reason why we've reached out to other law enforcement agencies. It has been my understanding that there has been, like you said, some positions of the board maybe in the past, and we're here to develop a different relationship. That's what we want to do moving forward. We don't want to continue looking in the past. And I think this would give us the opportunity to, be able to train some different constables in areas that they may not be comfortable in.
Right.
Not every constable has a law enforcement background such as myself, but this would give us the capabilities of being able to teach them the right way.
Okay. Thank you,
sir.
Supervisor Gould.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Constables, as you know, I've been supportive of you guys in the past. I would much rather spend money on training than have you guys get into a situation that you get injured because you lack the training. So I think that training would be a good investment for you. And bear in mind, the county sheriff is not required to be a certified law enforcement officer either.
Right.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, next, Director Mornian, did you have something to say?
I just wanted to add a couple of comments. So in conversations with the constables and with the presiding judge when we all met to discuss their budgets, the presiding constable, Mike Hogard, who sits on the Constable's Ethics Standards and Training Board, has made very clear for several years in a row that there are multiple grant opportunities available to the constables for training. And so when we met this year, we discussed that again, of the constables applying for those grant monies that are available through the board. So what we did was we also had the constables calculate mileage-wise what the additional travel expense would be for the training that they're requesting. And so we increased their travel budget by $1,500, which is what the number that we were provided by the constables. We did not increase their budget for training because we've basically been told by the presiding constable that if they fill out the grant application and put their name on it, they're going to get the funds. That's almost verbatim what the presiding constable told us. So I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware of that.
Okay, thank you for the point. It is now 12:30. We're going to move to the courts. Judge Moss, by my sheet, the courts include Superior Court, Clerk of the Court, Probation, and Justice Court. Are you going to speak for everybody?
No.
Okay.
I will speak for the Superior Court.
And you get 10 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. Back in August of 2023, that date could be a little bit off. I'm going by memory. Oh, excuse me, I was not being polite. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, County Manager Elters, thank you for having me. I'm Steve Moss. I'm presiding judge of Mohave County, Arizona. I would like to extend my appreciation to Luke and Sam and the other employees and staff that we've worked with in putting together our budget. I appreciated the demonstration or the presentation of the 4 options. From the Superior Court's perspective, those options don't work, and I want to tell you why. Back in August of 2023, I sent out to the board, and I think I've sent a copy of that information to the new board members who've since taken positions. I analyzed the workload of the clerk's office and the various judges and compared them to our peers across the state. And shouldn't surprise anyone that Mohave County judges do a lot more for a lot less. Then, because the workload was continuing to increase, the National Center for State Courts came in and analyzed our workloads and compared to the rest of the state. Under Arizona standards, we have time standards that we have to comply with, which includes you have to enter a decision within 60 days when briefing closes or trial closes. You have to have 96% of your cases done within 1 year, things of that nature. So we are under time pressure to get things done. And our workloads, our case filings had greatly increased. I'm going by memory. Civil filings, I believe, increased roughly 68% over 1 year alone. And on a per capita basis, we were doing more jury trials than any other county in the state. I think gross number, we were number 2 or 3, but when you calculate our size, we're number 1. And so we requested, as part of, since the beginning of this year, we requested 3 new judicial positions. I want to make clear, we need 5. The National Center for State Courts says we need 5 judges. Now, judges are expensive. I understand that. Also, we need places to put judges. So I did not ask for 5 judges this year because I do not have the places to put 5 judges. But 5 judges are necessary for us to complete our workload in a timely and professional and competent fashion, as opposed to trying to cut corners to get across the finish line so that we don't blow that 96% or that 60-day rule or the other rules that are imposed upon us. So I asked for 3. This board was very gracious, and I do greatly appreciate it when you approved Division 8 back in January. And as part of this budget cycle, I asked for 2 commissioners. In addition to that, because I can, by the end of this, by roughly April of 2026, I have spaces for 3 judges. I have rooms that I can put them into, courtrooms that I can put them into. Under the recommended proposal, I guess it's been referred to both as proposal or option B or option 2, we don't get any of those 2 commissioners that I asked for. And I understand why. Based upon what Luke has presented and County Manager Elters has presented, it would break the budget. A commissioner costs roughly, I'm going by memory, $420,000 when you count. What's that? 428. Therefore, I think I get an A on that one then. $428,000 if you include the commissioner, his judicial assistant, and the clerk. It breaks the budget when it comes to trying to be structurally balanced. So I understand why they didn't include it. It doesn't change the fact that it's necessary. We need those people. We need those bodies. And I'm not asking for all 5, because again, I don't have all 5. I can't put them places. But I am asking for Division 8, which is already approved, and the 2 commissioners. So if you were to ask me what I think of the budget presentation, I say, fine, go with option 2 or option B, whichever designation you prefer, and add 2 commissioner positions to that so we can do the job the best we can with the space that we have available. Now, not all, if money fell from heaven, and you gave me those dollars right now, I would not be able to house them right now. I can house 2 judicial positions right now. In April of 26, when the remodel is done, that's when I would house all 3. So when it comes to the commissioners, they would not be hired tomorrow. I would hire 1 tomorrow. I would wait for Division 8 to be approved. It's been approved. It exists. But the funding is being worked out in the legislature. I'd wait for that to happen. And then the third judicial spot would be in place sometime around April of 26 when I have a place for them. So they wouldn't all come into being instantly. The earliest that 1 commissioner would come into play would be, I think, if you folks get done with this budget process in July or August, would be September. Division 8 would come into play in, I can't guess what the governor's going to do, but practically speaking, November or December. And then in April, that's the third judicial spot would come into play. So I have a need, and I can find the bodies. Unlike the recruitment problems, people like being judges for whatever reason, and we choose the best of the best. So we have the need, and I can get the bodies. I just need the funding from this board. So I would suggest that whatever option the board puts into play, that they add 2 commissioners to that option. Going into something else that was suggested by staff is, I guess there's a $25 million surplus, and they want to talk about infrastructure projects. We have Phase 2B of the courthouse, the Law and Justice Center is what it's been referred to, and that will give me 1 more courtroom and, with some tweaks, a second hearing room. So when that's done sometime in 2027, assuming that it gets funded and it gets completed within the timeframes that were estimated for Phase 2B, then I could house the other 2 positions probably 2027, 2028. I don't want to tell you that when it comes to that in 2027, 2028, that we will be copacetic, that everything will be great, because the numbers for court filings are doing this. And so as soon as you fill all 5 positions, I'm probably, based upon past history, going to say we're still short, because when it comes to population growth, when it comes to travel in and out of Mohave County, for whatever the reason is, and I'm not a statistician and I don't know why our case numbers are exploding, whatever the reason may be, it's going one direction. And as a gross matter, sometimes we have a couple of points fall in one area and then we get double digits in another area. But as a general matter, it's going one direction. So I'm asking you if you could add to this budget 2 commissioner positions at $428,000 each. And if, when you look at what to do with the infrastructure, the surplus projects with that infrastructure, if you can fund Phase 2B of the courthouse, so that will finally be complete. And I'm ready to answer any questions that you have on the Superior Court.
Thank you, Judge Moss. Supervisor Borelli.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Moss, where would District 8 be?
That's going to be stationed in Lake Havasu.
There's this open courtroom?
There's an open courtroom in Lake Havasu. The 2 spots I have open immediately right now is there's a courtroom open in Lake Havasu because the municipal court moved out. We also have the hearing room that's currently at the jail and currently not in use. So I could put bodies in those places almost immediately.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from our board?
By the way, the jail hearing room is not ideal. When you send people seeking orders of protection to the jail, they get panicky. When you send people who have juvenile dependency issues and all the other traumas, that people don't come to court because they're happy. They come to court because they have problems. When we send them to a hearing room in the jail, I don't think it's necessarily ideal, but we got to make do with what we did have. That's what we have. Supervisor Martin.
Here's Moss. If I got this right, what you're asking for from this board right now is $850,000.
Yes, which is probably why it wasn't included in the recommended proposal. It's a lot of money, but it's needed.
I would ask Mr. Mournian, do we have $800,000 that we just can pluck out and just say, hey, the judge wants it, let's give it to him? I mean, I'm not questioning.
And keep in mind, it's every year. It's not just 1 year. It's every year.
Right.
Supervisor Martin, the budget that we've presented, the option B, is what we can afford on a recurring basis. And so to accommodate the presiding judge's request for 2 additional court commissioners, which is $856,000 each year, so recurring expense, that would equate to basically, with everything that we presented, if we add $856,000 to that, you would need to boost the property tax levy rate by 3.15 cents. That would pay for $856,000 for 2 court commissioners and the associated staff and other expenses. That's the only mechanism that we or the board has left at its disposal to increase the recurring revenue streams.
Okay, thank you.
So Supervisor Martin, I understand. I think I've acknowledged that several times. There's a revenue issue here. But you can't ignore that the need is there. The public needs it. The court needs it, because if we are going to process these cases in conformity with the law, we need the bodies. And so you're stuck with the dilemma. I understand that. But we need 5 judges. I'm asking for 2, since you've already given me 1. But we need 5. 5 are necessary. 2 is all I can practically make use of at this present moment in time without putting him in a schoolroom someplace.
What about 1?
Are we negotiating? I should have started with.
I'm not.
If so, I would have started with 5 and compromised with 3.
No, I'm just saying, you're saying that you want 2 right now. We see that 2 financially is going to throw us into a complete tizzy. And I don't know what 1 would do. I'm just saying. I mean, we can all, you're right, unless we get some money dropping from the sky, I don't know what we're going to do. But I'm just asking, would 1 help you through? And then I would ask Luke, what happens if we did 1 instead of 2?
Okay. 1 would help. 2 would help. I need 5. I'll put it that way. Yeah. So this is not a want, okay? There's no wants here. I need 5. You've given me 1 with the Division 8. Now I need 4 more. And as part of this budget, we had requested 2 because of logistics, practical considerations. I need those 2 just like I need those 5. And any position helps, is what it comes down to.
Okay. All right. Luke, is there an answer if 1 instead of 2 were authorized? How would we do that, and what is it going to do to the budget?
Supervisor Martin, so the same answer that I gave previously, we would basically cut the cost in half. And so rather than a 3.2 cent property tax levy increase to increase the recurring revenue, we would need roughly half of that. So about 1.55, 1.6 cents of an increase. So that would take the rate that we've proposed from 1.8147 and add 1.6 cents on top of that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board?
I think I depressed everyone.
All right. Thank you.
You can argue with me. I'm not wearing a black dress.
We're going to call up the last elected official, I think, is the clerk of the board, or clerk of the court, excuse me. Welcome.
Morning, Chairman, Supervisors. I don't have any initial or additional comments, assuming you go with option B. But if you have any questions for me, I'm here to answer them.
Any questions for the clerk of the court? Hearing none, thank you.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. We're going to move to the department heads. And I would include in that the probation department and the justice courts as well. I'm not going to call you out specifically. If you want to have 10 minutes at the podium for your department, please step forward. Yep, enter the gauntlet. That's right. Department heads. Any of our department heads wish to address the board. Going once, going twice. Okay, wow. That takes us to board discussion with our county manager and finance director. I'd open that up. Anyone have any comments? Changes that they'd like to see? Anything at all?
Mr. Chairman.
Not hearing any, so
since you're not having any takers, may I? Just would like to point out that law and justice consists of 4 departments. The board at the board request has heard from 3, which was the sheriff, the courts, and the county attorney's office. The defense side of the family is scheduled to appear before you this coming Monday, so you can hear from them as well. And so all four of them make up or compose the law and justice system in this county. And please note, as you contemplate and consider their needs and requests, that it's interrelated in many ways, and when the board funds one, it's likely to impact the others. You will see in the defense presentation on Monday that you will hear the term reactionary again. So with so many courts, within the courts, you have the Superior Court and the Justice Court, and they have, depending on the number of judges and the number of trials, then you have attorneys to process those as well. So I just wanted to remind you of that and let you know that they're ready to present to you on Monday. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Elters. So to address Supervisor Martin's point, I think to get those commissioners, we'd be looking at a general fund levy rate increase. Is that correct?
Chairman Lingenfelter, board members, yes, if the desire of the board was to add one court commissioner or two court commissioners, either one would require a increase to the county's primary property tax levy rate in order to maintain a structurally balanced budget.
And that's assuming your recommendation of option B. Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairman Lingenfelter.
Any other comments or discussion from the board? Supervisor Lettman.
I'd still like to see you change the assumption on the percentage increase from the 3.2 up to 3.3 or 3.4. I don't know if we can direct you to do that in terms of the preparation of the budget. I think that's very conservative. I know that's kind of pulling money out of that's right there. That could almost finance what the $500,000 the sheriff is looking for.
Supervisor Lettman, I can certainly go back to my desk and crunch the numbers and get back to the board with what impact that would have precisely. I'd rather not go off of the back of a napkin calculation here on the spot.
Understand.
But I'd be happy to provide that information to the board.
I'm willing to take the risk of.
I don't think that. So just to make sure that I'm clear, we had budgeted for that at a 3.2% growth rate compared to the current year, and what you're proposing is to move it up how far?
3.4. You're almost a full point below the executive. I think that's very conservative. You're still well below the joint group.
Supervisor Lettman, I'll just add that the 3.2 is going to continue to be my recommended to the board. That's based on my professional judgment, but I can certainly calculate what the impact would be to move it up to 3.4.
And I respect your judgment, and I have other board members up here who may disagree with me.
Very good. Supervisor Borelli, and then I'll get to you, Supervisor Martin. Thank you.
Well, it's been my experience going through the state budget. When you look at JLBC, we pretty much stick close to what JLBC has. The executive always goes real high because they want to borrow to pay for things. But when we were doing the state budget, we stuck pretty close to JLBC's number.
Supervisor Borelli, that is why our projections are generally more in line with JLBC than the executive. But as I stated previously, JLBC is looking at the statewide rate, which is heavily influenced by what happens down in Phoenix. And we based ours more on what we are seeing as the Mohave County experience in revenue growth.
Supervisor Martin.
Chairman, I just want to make a note Judge Moss was talking. I've been over to the jail and I saw that hearing room. I personally would not want my family or any of your families to have to go in there in a courtroom setting. I went through there and I mean, there's people walking around there that if he was using that for a courtroom or as judge's chambers, you're right. It's not a very pleasant place.
I agree with you, but beggars can't be choosers, and that's what's available. I will tell you that I'm perfectly fine with the board taking a lot of that surplus and doing some additions to various courtrooms and building it, but I think Luke would have a stroke if I was to suggest that. But I need the bodies. We have the work that needs to be done.
Yeah, and Judge, I'll tell you this, I don't question for 1 minute your need.
Yeah.
I've been in the system, so I know what you're talking about somewhat. But, you know, what we're going to be able to do, like I say, if we're all up here in shock, we should be. I mean, you know, we hear your need, and there's no question there is a need. But then we hear our budget people telling us, hey, what are we going to do? And then, you know, the options that I'm seeing us being faced with is raising this property tax tremendously. And I'm just wondering, what is the public going to think about that? I mean, will they accept that if we had to do this, that we had to do it because the need is there to serve their needs? Or, you know, what's the fallback going to be? Like I say, it's going to be a daunting task, and it's not one I think any of us are looking forward to, but I just want to recognize you're right, that jail thing, if you had one, I'd put them anywhere but put them in that jail.
When Phase 2B is done, and until I get to my fifth spot, I can move them back over. But again, it's like a game of dominoes. You know, I have a need for 5 judges. I can house 3 staggered over time for this budget year.
Right.
You've approved 1. I need another 2. The math sucks. I admit it. It's horrible, to use the layperson terminology, as opposed to being in a deficit. It's a very horrible thing that you've presented with, and all I can do is report to you what we need, and you folks go from there.
Okay, sir.
Thank you very much, Supervisor.
I think when that courtroom in the jail was designed, it was to try to cut down on jail transportation costs for things like initial hearings and through video technology and things like this.
I'm not advocating for the use of that jail. I will gladly retreat that court hearing room. I will gladly retreat from that just as soon as I have another spot that I can house a judge in. It's not ideal. It's not great. It's what I have available at the moment, and I need the bodies, which means I need the places in order to address the workload, which is going nowhere but up.
Is the court using that for initial appearances and things like that right now, or is it just sitting there collecting dust?
Because basically Zoom means we don't have to transport as much. And so the world of Zoom has been very helpful. We've moved into the 21st century a lot, which is very good in a lot of ways. It's bad in others, but it's good in a lot of ways. People think they can be laxer when they're not physically present, and the judge can't have the bailiff put hands on them.
I don't debate your need, but it seems like this county, in a few instances, has funded things for the legal services in the courts that aren't used. I mean, if that court's not being used, and we have like a whole side of this building on the 3rd floor is county attorney's office. There's nobody in there. You know, it's like I want to make sure that what we fund, we're actually using it.
Yeah, well, when you fund my 2 additional commissioners, if you fund them, which I really think you should fund them, and the total of 4 that we'll need over the next couple of years, they will be used. They will be put to work immediately.
Right.
And we will only hire the best because it'll be a sink or swim situation for them.
Thank you,
because
Judge
the
Moss.
work needs to be done.
Judge Huerta.
Thank you, Chairman Lingenfelter. I don't want to correct Judge Moss, but we are using that courtroom. The limited jurisdiction courts are doing change of pleas with the in-custody individuals, so it's not a wasted room. It's being occupied and used throughout the week. So even at the time when Judge Moss would need it for one of his hopefully new judges or commissioners, it'd be limited in how much he'd be able to use it, or we'd have to figure out another scheduling difficulty of transporting prisoners so our courts could use them.
Thank you for the clarification, Judge Houghton.
Yeah, he is correct. I was focused on the Superior Court world and not the Justice Court.
Well, you're dialed in. I get it. Everybody here gets it. Supervisor Borelli.
Yeah, I got a question for Judge Moss.
Judge Moss.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judge Moss, can supervisors act as pro temps?
For the Justice Court? I don't think so. There's a separation of powers issue. You'd have to get an AG opinion or a county attorney opinions because it's not my job to give legal advice. In fact, I probably shouldn't do that. But when it comes to the basic separation of powers, there would be an issue because of conflicting constitutional rules.
That's good. I just want to make sure we're not going to get voluntold to do something extra. So,
well, if you don't want to do it, maybe.
Supervisor Borelli.
Thank you, Judge Moss. This is a question for the manager. How many vacancies that are funded in the county that we're eliminating employee-wise?
I want to make sure, Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Borelli, I want to make sure I understand your question. There are more vacancies in the county than the vacant positions that are funded. So as we met with each department and we went through, the sheriff is a good example since he spoke eloquently. The sheriff, like other departments, have agreed in the past to free certain positions to increase their pay because that was the only way to do it. So there are more vacancies than there are vacant positions that are funded. The vacant positions, every department has come in during the budget prep process and justified the need. These are positions that were either filled recently and somebody retired, left, or so on. So there are, the number changes daily because we're constantly recruiting and hiring and then people leaving. But as you heard earlier, it's an ongoing somewhere between 80 to 100 funded positions that are vacant that departments are trying to fill. And the number fluctuates, like I said.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, manager, excluding the court system and sheriff, just county personnel that are vacant, that have been funded. If they haven't been, how long have they been vacant and they've been funded? Can we eliminate some of those positions? We know it's vacant, but just not budget, not fund it, just close it out and not fund it.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Borelli, to answer that question, we have to break it down into general fund, grant fund, and for example, an area that I know a lot about is public works and engineering. Mm-hmm. We have vacant engineers position. We do not have an engineering manager. We have an acting engineering manager that is not licensed and is work under the direct supervision of the public works director who is licensed. That has been vacant for several years, and we have not been able to fill it, yet it's HERF funded, has nothing to do with the general fund. So in order to answer your question, we have to break it down by fund type and look at the general fund, grant fund, and HERF fund that is protected, as you know, by law, and then answer that question for you. I think you will. I think if you were to have every department step up the way the sheriff and the courts have, you would hear from each and every one of them that they're shorthanded and they need the help. I had a member from the community just stop by yesterday to tell me how concerned they are with building permits, because they see an increase, and we better be ready to permit timely and stay on top of things and so on. So I would be really concerned and I'm just being candid with you because you asked me, to say that we can just take vacant positions and wipe them out because as it is, and we've said that to the board before, there is a burnout factor that I think in some ways is even exacerbating the problem. People get burned out and they leave and so on. So if the board wishes for us to explore that option, we can, and we've done a little bit of that last year when we went through an exercise of what would an 18% cut look like. We had an exercise that we worked with the board on, and departments were very concerned.
Thank you.
Manager Elters, a copy of that report, was that provided to the new supervisors when they were sworn into office or after? It may be a good idea to make sure that they're all brought up to speed on that report as well.
Mr. Chairman, board members, I do not believe that happened or that took place, but we'll be happy to provide a copy of that report. Sure. And we will.
I'm going to move to closing remarks. Supervisor Letman, any closing remarks? Supervisor Gould? Supervisor Borelli, any closing remarks?
Other than thank you for this presentation. It's been very informative. There's a lot of questions that I've gotten, some ideas we can kick around offline. Not to waste everybody's time and need more research later on. But thank you for this presentation.
Supervisor Martin, any closing remarks?
Well, I'd just say this has been an enlightening experience. It's a first one for me, and it's a very daunting and challenging thing that's going on right now. Like I say, there's a lot more information I think I'd like to get, but I'm going to tell you this. We have professional folks up here. We have Luke, his staff, and the county manager, and I, for one, I'm going to lean on them because they do have the experience. This is not their first rodeo. It may be mine, but it's not theirs. And I'm appreciative of the fact that we have staff out here that are making these recommendations for us and to enlighten us, because it's going to be something that as we go forward, I'm going to learn more about. But I appreciate the opportunity to sit here and watch this and be part of this. Thank you.
Great. I want to say thank you to Manager Elters, to you, Director Mornian, your staff, and all of our elected officials, all of our department heads, all of your staff, all of the staff that are watching, we're all in this together. This is a very comprehensive process that we go through every year. It's never easy. There's always tough decisions to be made, but I want to just thank everybody for the sacrifices that you've made, for the spirit of trying to get something to, we may not all love, but we can live with, and we will continue. So I want to just say thank you. Any closing remarks for you, Manager Elters?
Mr. Chairman, I know everybody is getting ready to walk out. 2 minutes. We set out to present the board with a structurally balanced budget. And in all sincerity, the pain that you were feeling today by hearing those departments that spoke and those that didn't, we experienced the same thing when we met with them. And when Director Mornian said, what we recommended, the 26 out of the 32 requests were scaled back. Believe me, those are the type of things. What can you live with, and what can we work, and where can we go to make it happen? On one hand, we take a lot of pride in presenting you a structurally balanced budget, but with all the components in it. And we understand the board has priorities that are not in this budget. And if you wish to do it, we'll figure out a way to make it work. But we wanted you to know what we have and what limitation we have. And if something is added, the board needs to know how it's going to get paid for. And the structural balanced budget is the path forward. At least that's what we recommend. And I will stop there. I just want to say many, many thanks to Luke and Sonia, who is not here today, Judy and Dawn, and everyone in the room, the department heads that worked with us. We spent hours with them, face to face. Grateful to you for your patience and your understanding and your willingness to stay the course and work with us to present the board with what we presented today. And board members, thank you for your patience and for allowing us to, present 100 slides to you, but the idea was that we wanted to be transparent and give you a full picture. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
And all of our employees, I want them to know that they're appreciated, they're valued. We'll fund what we can, but if we can't fund it, it may not mean that we don't value what you do. So with that, we are adjourned.